All right, we are go for launch.
Good evening and welcome. I'd like to call the October 27, 2021 Henrietta Town Board meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Here.
Councilmember Stafford,
Here.
Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin tonight with a silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I make a motion to approve the minutes from our precinct meeting on October 13th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. So we are going to
Start.
change the order slightly. We're going to read one of the resolutions first, since we have the honoree, if you will, present. So Lisa, can I get my first resolution?
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 22-293, 2021. Whereas Nancy Maxwell began working for the Henrietta Public Library as a page in October of 1976 before leaving for sunny Geneseo to earn her master's in library studies, and then returning on May 10th, 1979 as a librarian, a position she served for 42 years. And whereas in her role as librarian, Nancy has managed the page staff she was once a member of, providing outstanding employment experiences and convincing many of the people who came through the program to make libraries their full-time career. And whereas Nancy has navigated the ever-changing world of audiovisual materials and magazines for the library through several periods of major technological evolutions. And whereas Nancy has served as the library's most dependable and kind reference librarian, answering questions beyond measure for the public and her colleagues every day she has worked. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board, on behalf of the Henrietta Public Library and its board, recognizes Nancy Maxwell's 42+ years of first-rate, steadfast service to the town and the legacy she leaves behind, and thanks the Maxwell family for sharing Nancy's time with the town and our library patrons.
Second.
Comments?
We are very honored to have you with us as long as you have. I can't even imagine, because I know at my going to the library, the changes that I've seen, I can't imagine what you've seen. And we're just really honored to have you representing our town at the library and all the wonderful things that you've done. Thank you very much.
I just think that's tremendous to put in so many years of service to the library and to the Henrietta community. My first job was as a page in the library, and I think that's fantastic that you then loved it so much that you went on and became a librarian and have served for so long. Thank you so much for your years of service.
Thank you for your 42 years of dedicated service. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy, for your dedication to our library and all the people that you've helped.
So Nancy, we've got a certificate here if you'd like to come up. Lisa, do you want to join me since you're the liaison to the library board, and we'll present this? Adrian, I assume you're going to take pictures?
Adrian should be up there too.
And then if we could get a picture first with us, and then if someone else could take over your phone to get you in the picture too, Adrian.
Maybe Mr. Martin can do that. Oh, Linda's gonna do it. Linda's gonna do it. No, Linda's a better photographer. Jenny, Mike,
What's that?
look at John when he's talking to you.
Oh,
Any further comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Okay, first up, we have special use permit application number 2021-057 SXJ 1487 Brighton, Henrietta, Townline Road to operate a beauty spa in an industrial zone district with a mixed-use redevelopment area overlay. Tax account number 148.19-2-39, or as more particularly described in plans on file in the town clerk's office and posted online at henrietta.org/projects. Planned hours of operation are 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. We have a representative. Please introduce yourself and how you're related to the project.
Hi, my name's Andrew Hintonock, and I'm an architect practicing out of Geneva, New York. My address is 86 Castle Street. I represent C, who is representing the owner of this property. I'm the architect for multiple projects. I'm not doing too much here other than presenting this for, for their, I speak a little better English.
Sure.
So what we have is an existing residential house that they want to use for their spa. They're going to be offering, facials, cleansing, exfoliating, steaming, extraction, finishing, and massage, as far as I know, as well. Jen behind me is a licensed massage therapist, and we also have licenses from another license from New York State for Chen Ji Fen, who will also, their partner, so she'll work there as well.
Do we have those? Because in the site visit, there were no current licenses posted anywhere.
I don't think they're ready to do that yet. I think that I do have a copy of one here. Do you have your copy? And I've read over the
I'm not
comments.
sure what aesthetics is.
Aesthetics is facials, and
Okay,
I think the ladies up there could answer that better than me, really.
okay. So did they have licensure for massages?
That
Because
would
I
be
believe
on your
that's a
end.
separate
You have a
massage license, correct? Masseur license?
No,
What was your
there is
question?
not for that. That's why I think that it's right now just basically a beauty spa for facials and those kinds of things that go on in that regard.
And then with regards to, again, from a pedicure, manicure standpoint, is
That
that
all,
covered under this license, or is that also a separate license?
that I don't know. Are we doing pedicures and manicures? No. No manicure, no pedicure, manicure.
Hey, Supervisor, can I see the license? Would you mind?
So clarification on an esthetician, I just looked it up. They perform cosmetic skin treatments such as facials, superficial chemical peels, body treatment, and waxing.
Oh,
So one of the issues, so again, the big issue I see here is that they're asking to operate a licensed business, but don't have anybody involved who is licensed to perform those services.
She is, where is she in Toronto right now? Where is she? She's in New York right now.
Who is she?
The person that's licensed.
Right, but that license that we received is just for the aesthetics.
Right. That's what they do.
I understand, but the list, correct me if I'm wrong on the application, it included other stuff besides just aesthetics. So my point is, alls we
I
would,
think that covers that, the facial massage preparation, cleansing, exfoliating, steaming, extraction, finishing. I'm sure there's probably
It doesn't
other.
say that on the application. At least not what I'm seeing here. What are you reading from right there?
I'm reading from an email, so I was prepared for the meeting tonight from them,
Okay,
from the people that are going to actually be running it.
so the application doesn't say what you're telling us right
it
now.
says face, neck, hand, foot, facials. It does not mention a massage, which again,
I
you had
guess
mentioned
if
massage.
I did, that's my bad.
Right,
'cause
well, I do know that.
I represented her previously when she opened a massage spa in Pittsford.
Gotcha.
So that's my assumption, and I guess I assumed wrong.
Was that Pittsburgh or Pittsburgh?
Pittsford.
Okay, thank
Is
you.
that still running or is that?
No, she moved around, whatever. I mean, that was like 13 years ago.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Do you have a business license for this? Because I see the
She
personal.
does have a DBA. Do you have your DBA?
That's okay. Let's take a peek at it. Okay. May I see the license again, please, when you get a minute? All right, so one issue I see here, perhaps some reason for some of the confusion, is that your DBA here is for someone different than the applicant.
Okay.
So the person who has applied to the town is different than the person who's indicated on the DBA certificate.
And why is that an issue? Because couldn't you run a business and have people that are licensed in the business doing the actual treatments?
Well, your application says that the business
So there's a property owner, Dan Chow,
Yeah,
and the applicant, can't quite read it, Kui Fen Chen?
right.
And an agent.
Where's the agent?
Towards the bottom of page 1, signature of the agent. Zuchin,
Okay,
she,
so
Yeah.
my question is, who is Kui Fen Chen? And what does that have to do with the app? What is this person's interest in this
Allegedly,
application?
she's the manager. Is that correct?
owner.
She would be the person providing those services because she is licensed in that.
Okay,
So according to the application, she put her title down as manager.
okay,
Yep.
because it says, here it says signature of owner or lessee.
Well, that would be the owner of the business, not necessarily the owner of
Yeah, I think they're just renting that property.
the property. Yeah, from what it looks like, right. There's a landlord.
Right.
Yeah.
Dan Chow
Dan
put
Chow.
himself down as
Right.
landlord, so,
Ms. Chen is the licensed person here.
okay.
She is signed as the owner or lessee. She is,
Again,
but she's not.
I see applicant,
Who's the agent?
she's the business owner, not the property owner.
Yeah, but according to the DBA, she's not the business owner.
Gotcha. Well, actually, again, in the application, she refers to herself as manager.
Right.
But it also says owner.
Where am I looking at that?
Bottom of page 1, signature of owner or leasee.
Yeah, so I think she's considering herself the leasee.
Okay. But not the owner of the business.
If signatures other than the owner of written. no.
So
Yeah,
who is this
I think they're
agent?
partners. I think they're partners in the business.
Partners?
Yes. What's it? Oh,
So it sounds like what we're gonna need to have is some of the licensure cleared up. Otherwise, right now, we'd only be able to permit what's on the current license.
you mean the application?
Pardon?
You mean the application? What's on the application?
I'm not, right now, again, the only licensure we're seeing right now
It's
is
for, and
is
that's,
for the facials, waxing, chemical treatment, that type of stuff. So that would be
Correct.
the only services we'd be able to put in the special use permit now.
that is correct.
I do know that there was a visit paid where there appeared to be massage going on. That can't continue if there isn't a licensed masseuse or masseur present.
Okay. So she doesn't have that, and I guess that would have to be discontinued.
Right.
So.
So I guess the question is, do they want the special permit for just the facial, amend the application essentially to be just for the facials, waxing and chemical treatment? Or would they rather come back at the next meeting with the other licensure, if there's another individual as licensed?
No, just the facials is what I'm hearing. The esthetician,
Estheticians.
however you say that.
Yours is as good as mine. I'd never heard of the word before tonight.
Esthetician?
Statistician.
Esthetician.
Everybody's practicing.
Pardon me?
I actually know it. I know one.
If you had a facial, yeah.
So I think if that other aspect of the business is an issue, that would have to discontinue until someone does come forward
Is
with a license.
licensed and updates their special use permit.
Correct.
And it should just be clear that continued violations of the licensure could result in the revocation of the special permit and thus their certificate of occupancy. I do know there, I also will note that there is some concern. Let's see,
It's in a separate-
it needs to be inspected in terms of from a fire safety and from a building
Sure.
code standpoint.
I've asked and they don't plan on making any changes to the building itself, so I'm
Right.
not sure. You
So
know, it's
had
just-
the building previously been used for a business?
That I don't know.
Because I know it was a former residence.
But,
I just didn't know if there's ever been a business in there. Either way, if there has been, the building department should have that inspection on file. If there hasn't
That
been,
would
they'll
be
have to do a
part
new
of this,
inspection.
and that's part of this process, right?
Correct. Yeah, so basically, from both the building inspector and the fire inspector would have to come through and essentially give the okay to get a certificate of occupancy
And then they would have to make any changes that were required.
where required.
Sure.
Anything else?
Is the board inclined to attempt to move forward this evening or?
Again, if they're willing to restrict it to what they have licensure for, I am. I don't know about the rest of the board.
I did have a couple of questions.
Right. Yeah, I'm not saying moving forward now. I'm just saying, we're
Okay.
not calling for a vote now. I'm just saying, my point is, I'm not, I just wanted them to have that option. If they want the full, they'd have to come back. But I mean, the difference is when they come back to amend, they'll have to pay an additional fee. If we tabled it now, there'd be no additional cost when they come back. But so, questions?
Yeah, so who exactly is involved? Do we have a manager and then several people who are renting space? Is this how this is operating?
As far as I know, it's two people.
It's two individuals.
Yeah,
Okay, the two
it's
individuals that are
Chen and
listed
Shi,
here on
right?
this application?
I think it's the two individuals at the top. You have a
No, I
contact
think that
information,
C made the application for
right?
Jen.
So if you look here,
Yes, these two
These two
individuals.
individuals.
Yes, that's what I'm asking. Yep. So it's the two individuals that are listed on the application.
That's it.
Qi Fen Chen and I don't know how to pronounce this one, Ji Lin Shi.
You're the manager.
If you're gonna speak at the mic. Oh, okay.
She's the manager, and then
And she is, that's,
What's her name?
Your name?
Jen,
so. Qi-
J-I-N,
What's that?
J-I-N, the one that has power of attorney. That's her.
I don't see,
Who's
oh,
The
so it's the
agent?
signature of the agent.
Okay, so the agent. All right. And Jen, what is Jen's role?
She's the manager.
She's the manager?
Because
Yep.
that's not what, right.
That, okay, that is not what's listed on the application.
What's listed on the application?
What was that?
I don't have the application in front of me.
According to
so-
this, Qi Fen Shen lists herself as manager.
Is she the one that's in New
CHEN.
York?
Well, QIU
QUI.
is the, right,
Mhm.
because to my knowledge, the order of the surname comes first in the,
Gotcha.
right? So there's some confusion on this,
On the application,
Right.
it might be worthwhile to.
some apparently in between the two pieces of paper.
Oh, it's on you still.
What's it?
Mr. Supervisor, seems to be some confusion on who's the manager, who's the owner, what licenses we
Yeah.
have.
Who the business is.
Yeah, who's going to be actually
I'd like
operating
to
it?
make a motion. I'm looking through this. I'm not ready to vote either way, so I'd make a motion to table this application.
So, yeah. My suggestion, if the board does move forward with the tabling, is first of all, to provide us copies of everything here. Please and thank you. And second would be to revise your application.
Yes.
You've got, I'm just going to read the last names as they're presented on the application. You've got Chen, Shi, and there's another person on here.
Yeah, the owner,
Down,
The one who's
signature
on
of
the
agent,
agent.
down at the bottom.
that's the same one.
Yeah,
Well, and then there's a. Oh, I get, okay, so I guess it is one of the same, that's the. Shi.
you have,
So
right.
there's two individuals. The person next to contact info is also listed as the agent.
Right. Even though, as we understand it, Chen is the manager and thus would be the agent, not the owner.
No, I think it's she as in last name, SHI, as the manager,
Okay,
and Fen is the anesthetician.
okay. Yeah, it would seem to make sense to
To update the
be
application, because
updating the
it's,
It's
application.
backwards.
it's not how it's on the application yet. And then, like I said, if we could get a copy of the licensure and then a clarification of what services they want to provide.
Yeah, you should, in the section, there's a section on the application that says description of the proposal. Right now it says, it doesn't say anything about, it says services, but it's not specific as to,
It says to do a business as beauty spa equals face, neck, hand, foot, facials.
Right,
so we'd like something more specific in terms of licensure. So aesthetics, for example,
Sure.
would be, and then you
Right.
can expand from there.
Right, so if they have other licensure, they, in fact, if they basically list what they're licensed to do. So aesthetics, masseuse, whatever, they can-
manicures,
Sure.
Right.
pedicures. Mhm.
beautician, they can list those licensures and what's covered under those is fine.
Is the proper, are they currently doing these services there?
Not that I know of, but. You guys operating now? No. So
Right.
I think they can't really until they get the permit and go through the process
And
legally
is-
anyway.
Is this,
Well, just to be clear, I believe they were operating
Yeah,
and they
well,
received a visit from the building department that they had no licensure.
Gotcha,
And so they were shut down to come in and get permit.
gotcha.
so now this was originally a residence. Is there being any changes or anything like that to make it?
No, they
into-
don't plan on making any changes.
Okay,
There's
So
three
again,
rooms that
Our
there's,
building department or our fire department might require something.
okay. And is this
Yeah, like an
currently
exit sign or
still a
something.
residence? Are people still living there or is it just?
I
a
don't think so.
business? Okay,
Because just to be clear, that can't be the case. They can't both live there and work there. It's not a qualified home occupation. So,
and in terms of parking, are there any changes or anything that's going to be made to any of the, to the parking?
no,
'Cause it's just the driveway, but on
driveway,
the
yeah.
map, it indicates spaces for cars in the front.
on the existing driveway.
No,
Car
outside the existing driveway, it looks like on the lawn.
I'm gonna pull up the imagery just to see
Yeah.
what's on there. 1487 Henrietta Townline Road. Yeah, where they have the customer car parking would be allowed because that's grass. So they're gonna have to address that as well. Their current mapping shows their drawing shows the cars parked on the lawn.
Yes.
How about signage? Is there any signage?
Sir?
I don't know. I don't know if they're,
All right, well, we need to know that also.
sure,
Right.
if they, I think if they had to do, if they wanted to do that, they would have brought that up. But yeah, that's odd that, I think that they can just park in the driveway. There's not gonna be like multiple people where that's an issue.
Yeah,
They
the
can just
asphalt
use the existing driveway.
Let me bring that up again.
It's not
So,
extensive. I mean. the
It's
driveway-
wider than it's shown on this drawing, so I suspect that the survey map is out of date because the driveway looks like it's expanded from when this survey map was drawn, because the driveway comes right up against the wooden ramp. So again, it does look like they have some additional parking, but they wouldn't have, they don't have a whole lot, so there could only
Right,
be
yeah,
one or two
I think
customers
that,
at a time.
Right, and I think that's,
So
way
like I
they
said, if they
operate.
could update this application, including this drawing, because like I said, where they've got the customer car parking, that's not allowed. And update the application in terms of who is the manager. And then who's the owner of
who's
the business,
operator.
not the owner of the property, the owner of the business.
well, I think that's a shared ownership between those two, so.
Okay.
Have
And
the application reflect whatever it
Right.
actually is.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, if it's a partnership between the two of them, joint ownership, that's fine. We just need to know that.
And then provide us what you're gonna put up there for signage, because right now it just looks like a house.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I'm assuming it's made by appointment and not necessarily need a sign for drive-ins. I don't know if that's the case, but I'll get to the bottom of that too.
Okay,
So I have one question. Do they have any experience in this business field as far as everything that they've asked for, massages and
They do,
esthetician and all that?
they do.
Where are they operating now? Are they operating somewhere else now in that area?
Well, you've been to where? New York, Toronto, Hong Kong? I know she's been, the past years that she hasn't been here, she's been in Hong Kong, Toronto, and New York, so.
okay.
But she doesn't have any, they don't have licenses and they've been doing this?
So that, again, they had in the shop, there were licenses from other states.
Okay.
But no current New York licenses, New York State license displayed.
Gotcha.
So it seems like they do have at least one for the esthetician, but not for the other services, so.
But you operated one in Pittsford? Do you
She
recall the
did.
name of the one from
I don't
Pittsford?
remember the name of it.
So that was 13 years
But-
ago, so any licensure they
I
had there would be
did, I
expired.
can tell
by
you,
now.
I did get a massage there though, and it- so.
Would you
I
the
know
name
she
of the
knows how
one
to
in-
do it. What?
Would you know the name of the one in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, what's the name of your
Do you remember
business
the
in
name?
Pittsburgh?
Former name.
The same name as
What
you?
is the name?
SXJ?
SXJ? Is it SXJ or S and J? Because I have seen,
SXJ.
Okay.
Okay.
okay,
Yeah, we had to get a special use permit there too, so.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure we got a sign proof there off of Monroe Avenue.
sure. So we have a motion made by Councilman Stafford to table the application. Do we have a second?
Second,
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. So again, you have the list. If they
Yep.
want, they can send an email to supervisor@henrietta.org
Okay,
and we can, make sure they have
We'll
the
get it
complete
straightened
list of
around.
what we need. But
Sure.
yeah, if we can get this application straightened out, that would be great.
I will take care of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And
Great.
thank you for
Thank
helping them out. Pardon?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, we didn't open. it up.
Hold on one moment. We have a resident who wishes to speak on this application.
Good evening. I'm resident 1505 right next door to them. There is so much traffic over there. There's cars, there's people, all kinds of people coming all times of the day. I had a puppy, one of her clients sped out of her driveway, hit my puppy. My puppy died. That was 3 years ago. I'm over it, but I'm not over all this consistent, and there's never females. It's all males. Never, ever have I ever seen so many men come out and go into one building. I just want peace, but it's like the houses are so close to each other. You can hear everything, the car doors banging, the doors banging, and it's not a good environment. And if I had a say in it, it's something more going on there than just facials.
So like how many cars at a time will you see?
When I
in
left
the-
today, there was 5 cars in the driveway.
Today,
Yes,
there were 5 cars.
there was 5 cars in the driveway today. I should have taken a picture. I knew I was coming here tonight.
Right.
But I don't know if some of them are broken down or because some of them just sit there for days.
Okay.
They do live there. They do the services and they do live there because I see them come out all times during the day.
So there's vehicles there 24/7?
Yeah, there's at least 2 to 3 every day.
Okay, so like I said, to be clear, sometime back, this area, even though there's residents there, was rezoned industrial. Right now, it sounds like it was pre-existing non-conforming as a residence. So if they're living there, they can't be performing the business there. If they're performing the business there, they cannot be living there.
And I'm all for someone having a business and stuff. I'm all for that, especially I like women to be empowered. But when it gets to the point where there's cars coming and going till like 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, and then it's just like, I have a daughter, I have a new puppy that I don't ever let outside. So it's just, I don't think that's all that's going on there.
Understood, but
Okay.
we have to go by what's on the
Yes,
law.
and
And-
if it's
Right.
all legit, that's fine. I have no
Right.
problems, but I
Is-
just,
By the way, could you, I just had a request from the clerk. Could you state your name?
yeah, Mary Krasinski, KRUZINSKI.
Thank you. Sorry.
Is there a limit to how many vehicles can be parked in the driveway, particularly?
It's
if
a
we're
narrow-
talking about a
It's
business?
narrow.
We
I
would,
mean-
so basically, yes, we can make that determination
Yeah.
based off of the configuration of the driveway.
When I moved in, they put they pushed my yard back a little bit so they could have a little extra space. But there is like a border,
Right.
but they can't park on the grass over there because there's no way, then they would be on my property.
Well, it's illegal to park on the grass.
What would be on my property?
Whether on
then?
your property or on their property.
But
it's
I've
illegal.
never, ever seen them park on the grass.
Right. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate your
Thank you,
time.
sir.
Again, if you want to share additional, if you want to share photos or whatever, you too can send them to supervisor at
But like I
henrietta.org.
said, if they're legit and they're doing
Right.
facials like they say they're doing, more power to them.
Yep.
But it's too disruptive right now.
We
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other public comment? Sorry, I didn't ask earlier. Anything online, Becky? Okay, hearing none, then we will table this public hearing. Are you going to be back for the next meeting, or do you think you will need more time?
Not sure. I'll have to see what we gotta weed our way through on this.
So do we
For them to see.
leave it open, or do we reopen it, or what do we do? Yeah,
We have to re-advertise.
right.
Let's say you don't have-
Okay,
Don, can you turn your mic on?
he said no.
Hello, Becky. I would suggest just leaving it open. And if, they don't come at the next meeting, then we can close the
Table it.
hearing and
Close it.
close the
Okay.
application.
Okay. Okay, so you are on for the next meeting. What's the date, Becky? I know I put you on the spot, but Well, actually, I have the count. No, I don't. I have next year's calendar here.
I'm just pulling it up because I think this is the weird one. So I just want to double check. November gets a little weird. November 10th.
November 10th. So you will be on again for November 10th. If you can't make that, let us know as soon as possible. Okay.
Thank you.
So public hearing is not closed, but is tabled to the 10th. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have West Her Automotive Group, 4600 West Henrietta Road, to demolish an existing hotel and construct a 25,000 square foot building and associated parking for a car dealership in a commercial B1 zoned district, tax account number 175-0.10-2-77, or is more particularly described in plans on file in the town clerk's office and posted online at henrietta.org/projects. Would you please state your name and your affiliation to the project?
Good evening. I am Chris Snyder. I am a land entitlement and permitting specialist with Pastero Associates. I'm here tonight for Michael Newcomb, who could not make it. He's the project manager for this project. I believe that John Wabick, who is the applicant, is with us virtually tonight. He is with West Her Automotive Group.
Actually, it's Jim Malka. I'm the director of facilities with West Her. John is one of our owners.
Oh, great.
So for those unaware, this is the former Vista Hotel, which has been a dilapidated structure and had issues between unauthorized access, even fires. So I'm curious, in other words, is the plan that as soon as you take ownership, you would remove the existing buildings and properly dispose of that material?
So the plan is in two phases. One would be to demolish the building and then start the construction. There's some topographical alterations that are going to be made that you can see on the plans themselves. Some grading that will be done. And you can even see at the south side of the property there that there is a wall, and that's going to be a drop of about 8 to 10 feet. So everything will be removed from the site and then completely reconstructed with the dealership.
And there's no planned use of it prior to this being ready to go?
No.
Okay. You know, as when this application came in, I joked that on Henrietta Highlights, someone will post, great, just what we need is another car dealership. But I will tell you, if it means taking out that eyesore, another car dealership.
Very good.
Does people have questions?
For approval, when you plan on starting work on this site?
I don't have the project schedule with me. I don't know if that's something, Jim, that you could address.
Yeah, we're prepared to start. There's a large abatement project that would have to happen, so we're prepared to start that this fall/winter already, with the hopes of having it down by the end of the year. As far as the development of the new site, you know, we're going to have to go through the full process on that, so we won't necessarily be building a building anytime real soon, but we certainly would like to clean up the site as quick as possible.
Yeah, we like you to do that too. Thanks, Jim.
It's planning board. So just, there was a question from Councilman Stafford, basically, if we approve this, they wouldn't come back here again. The rest of the action would be at the planning board, not at the town board. But you know, again, this is their proposed plan. Now, that doesn't mean that the planning board might not alter it, but again, not significantly. If it were a significant change, we would expect you to come back and update the
Of course.
special use permit. Other questions?
I have no problem with tearing that place down and building a new car dealership.
All right.
But one thing I want to make sure that's required is there's a spot to load and to unload car haul trucks that stays free at all times. So, so they're not, so there's no problem getting in and out of the
Yes.
place.
So one of the problems we've been having with a number of the car dealerships is they overcrowd their parking lots. And then the car carriers can't get into their lot to discharge the vehicles and then pull back out again. As a result, they end up blocking traffic on West Henrietta Road, which of course is one of our busiest roads. And especially here where you're on the bank of a steep hill, that anybody coming flying over that hill doesn't know the car carriers that would create a really dangerous situation. So we should have a note that we want to make sure that the planning board takes that into account. I've actually already heard discussions about that, so I'm not overly concerned. In other words, but yes, I think that should be duly noted.
That's definitely something we can address.
Yeah, and to keep it open.
Right.
Yep.
That's I think they all put them in, a lot of them put them in, but they can't use.
Well,
them.
although when I look at this parking lot, I do not see an area where they could actually just, in other words, typically you need to keep one portion free to where the cars can get off, because so that could be all the way in the back. So that in the northeast corner, there's like 8 parking spaces there.
Yep.
If that area were instead striped clear, assuming the truck, you'd have to do the analysis of the turning truck, but that would be a place where they could then, you typically need some level of offsite. But again, I'll leave that up to you to work out with the planning board, but that's the type of things that we would like to see, because then if that's not parking, that will always stay clear. That'll always be a place where the truck can pull and essentially not be obstructing traffic for the rest of the parking lot while they're unloading.
Understood.
Anything else? Do we have any comments from the public? Come on up.
Thank you.
Good evening, Town Board. Craig Eckert, Deputy Town Supervisor. I wanted to kind of address 2 things. One that was kind of, I don't know if it was a rumor, maybe Kevin Wilson can help me answer. I was under the impression that this was going to be a 2-stage, whereas they're going to create a parking lot and operate it as a parking lot for some time until the building. And again, I believe that's fine, as long as it's part of the special permit.
I don't have a problem with that as long as the old building has been cleared first.
Right.
So once that's cleared, if while you're doing all the land portion, they don't actually need a second special use permit. If it's authorized for a dealership, storage of vehicles is allowed.
It's all set. Okay, without the building. And so I didn't know if there was a time frame of when, it was going to be a parking lot and when they plan for the new building, and that's fine. I don't.
If they don't get the new building built in time, their special permit expires.
Okay.
So
The other thing I wanted to give kudos to, we have been dealing with West Her on the planning board section with the alterations to the other building, and they are creating a car carrier plan. So that is something that they are actively working on. We had another issue even last week just on Calkins Road.
right.
And I've been
I
communicating.
was pretty sure I saw something going by. So
That's correct. So yeah, they are working on that plan with us in the planning board. So I don't know if this will include that. We were trying to deal with the existing, not so much the proposed at this point, but I'm sure we can integrate that all as one.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to thank you for your comments. We can definitely address all of that with the team.
Anything else from the public? Go ahead, Mike.
I do have a little concern now that couldn't get the diagram up here before. The car's headed out of there, turning south. I mean, would that have any issue with the traffic along West Henrietta Road? I see
So, I mean, in terms of because of the steepness of that hill, that doesn't have the greatest sight lines, but I will tell you that there are other driveways more dangerous than that one. But it's an existing driveway. And again, it used to be a hotel driveway, which saw a lot of traffic, but again, is that yeah, I guess I assume that would be governed by New York State DOT as to whether if there was some specific issue with that. I haven't seen anything from them saying no on that. And Craig's shaking his head. He hasn't seen anything either. Is Chris Martin back there or online? He was back there earlier, but Chris, if you're online, have you seen anything from the New York State DOT expressing an issue with that entrance?
Chris Martin, Director of Engineering and Planning. And we haven't seen anything yet, but certainly when it comes to planning board, they're going to have to go through, the permit process, even though it's an existing entrance, through when they do the Monroe County Development Review for it. So again, during the planning board process, we'll have them take a look at it. And if there's any issues, then they may have to make some modifications.
Okay.
The dealership that just is south of there, I think it's Bob Johnson now.
I don't, we'll call it the former Patrick's.
The former Patrick's. Do you know if the driveway that's going out there, if that's a right turn only? I'm not sure if that's turned a little bit, so you can only go right.
I don't know if it is, but in that particular instance, because they're a corner lot, they can make a right turn out onto Lehigh Station Road and therefore use the left turn arrow. So.
Okay. As long as it'll be studied in the future. Thank you.
So Don, correct me if I'm straight, but in terms of the seeker right now, we're addressing the demolition of the buildings. Because it is not a coordinated review, correct?
Right. Well, we're seekerizing the issuance of the special use permit, which does anticipate the construction and operation of a dealership. The planning board will separately seekerize their issuance of a site plan, which coincidentally or not, actually not coincidentally, is for the construction of a dealership. So we're both kind of separately doing seeker for the same.
So my point is, regardless of our ruling, if the New York State DOT said to the planning board, they have to do something different, that would come out in their seeker analysis and in their site plan review.
If that happened, yes, it could.
Okay. My point just being that by us doing this, we're not giving them the go ahead exactly as this is, because this is not a coordinated review.
Right, because they still have to go through the planning board, who also has to do seeker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just
Thank you.
making sure. Other questions? Anything online? Becky, anything online?
Nothing online.
Okay, so again, we have a resolution for this one because we were anticipating you guys may feel differently, but I felt, and actually it sounds like you felt the same way, that it was important that the building be demolished and removed before before there's any use of this for parking and such. What I didn't want to see is for years it sits there with the dilapidated buildings being used as a storage space for automobiles. Again, I have no problem with it once the building's been removed. And as long as that special permit is still in place, that's allowed under a dealership. They don't need a separate one.
So just for clarification, so we have approved a few like overflow parking lots. And when we've done that, we've stipulated that there's not to be sales there.
But this is a dealership. So that's.
Without, I mean, until there's an actual showroom that's built, it's essentially an overflow parking. Isn't that what we're looking at here?
Yes, but again, it's part of a dealership, so that is covered under a dealership.
And
The difference is
where's-
those overflow parking have been in places where there is not a car dealership and where there can't be a car dealership because of the car dealerships are restricted to what we refer to as dealership row.
I think
This is on dealership row.
what I think Councilwoman's getting at is, so theoretically now we're issuing them a car dealership license or special permit. They could theoretically decline to build the building, sell cars off the lot without a building, theoretically, right? And park cars there. So,
Right. that, to my knowledge, if you get a dealership license, that is allowed.
Right.
Although I
Unless you,
think New York State actually has a requirement that the dealership laws, I think, has to have on-site. I don't know if you know your New York State dealership laws, but to my knowledge, they had to have the titles for those cars on site if that's where they're being sold. There's some rule about that. That came up when we were talking with Tesla.
that could be true.
Yeah, I'm not sure myself, but that sounds correct.
That's in line with what happens, yes.
Let me ask you, when do you anticipate the second phase of the building of the 25,000 square foot building surface area?
That's hard to speak because we got a lot of planning to do. We have to get approval from the brands and that. I mean, that could be, up to a year process for, even just planning board approval and, everything that gets involved. So I don't have a specific time frame, but as soon as we get all of our approvals, we would start, yes. And that includes the brand approvals.
Is there a plan to do sales from this particular lot prior to building the vehicle showroom?
None whatsoever.
And what's the brand?
It's undisclosed at this point in time.
Okay.
I mean, I think you have a few options here. One, you can take the position that the dealership license authorizes all the stuff we've been talking about tonight, regardless of whether there's a building. You could take the position, and really this is for the code enforcement officer to take. This is really the code enforcement officer would be taking a position on these issues. The town could take the position that you need a building and a dealership to operate a dealership at this property. You could also take the position that, you could store cars here in the interim. And you can go so far, in my opinion, as to issue a separate special permit to permit that.
Could we add a condition that we put a time limit as to how long? It sounds like what we don't want to have is this become a permanent parking lot, which I don't think is their plan, but I think that's a concern. So if we basically said that a condition that the storage of vehicles on this lot would only be permitted up to, pick a 24 months, 36 months, whatever we want the board feels suitable, without the presence of
You could have it expire. Actually, your code, the permits expire unless they pull a building permit within a certain amount of time.
Well, they'd be going to be pulling a permit to do the demolition, if nothing else.
Okay.
And then they're going to start the site preparation, which again also is a permit. So
you're saying put a condition on there that the special permit will expire unless
not the special permit will expire, that the ability to park vehicles there without a showroom will expire after so many months.
How about you just issue a separate parking permit that expires in a year, issue 2 permits?
Is that an problem, Becky? Can we just create permit 2021-59 on the fly? Or are there already applications?
We already have applications. Yeah, I'd have to look to see what number that would be. Does it matter that we haven't advertised or anything?
Yeah, so let me do this before we go there. Let me ask Kevin that question since he's the head of code enforcement. Kevin, would you agree that if this permit basically allowed them to store vehicles up to I'm going to say 24 months. I don't know if that's the right time period, but for up to 24 months, as long as the old building is down, prior to the new building appearing, would you have an issue with that? Or do you think that would meet the standards of code as you see them?
Mr. Supervisor, Kevin Wilson, Director of Building and Fire Prevention. Once that building goes down, code enforcement will be extremely happy. I feel that if a special use permit for parking of the vehicles without the sales is important. But as long as you can give, Don feels that the time frame on that 24 months would be, I think would be more than enough time for them to get their approvals to get the building built, or at least pull a permit for it.
Right. So I guess the question, Don, is, does a dealership require the presence of a showroom? Because there's a lot of components to a dealership.
Yeah. As we found out.
Right.
It was my understanding that sales, service, and showroom is requirement for a dealership.
It seems like the answer to that.
But for instance, they don't have to have a service. It could just be sales and showroom, right? Nor do they technically have to have a lot. And I think of these ones that, that basically sell, or even I'll use another one. Was it the one that's the car vending machine?
Carvana, I think.
Yeah, so they
Supervisor, yeah.
basically, they don't exactly have a sales showroom, but they sell cars, they do it online, and they don't exactly have a lot, they have a building. But it certainly, to me, falls into this category. So I don't know. I think I do agree that we should expressly mention it here if we're going to allow it, so that way we can cover ourselves in the future. But, and again, I have no problem putting a time limit on it, because again, we don't want to, whereas we're ecstatic to have the old building come down, the idea is that, we don't want the whole area to just turn into parking lots.
Would it make sense tonight just to issue the parking special permit and to have them come back for the dealership permit when they're ready to?
Except
build?
they can't start the planning board process without this special use permit.
And they want to start that process?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So
That's why I'm saying I would just put a condition that I would put a number 3 that says, basically that the storage, and these would all be new vehicles.
Yes.
Actually, could I stipulate on that? That's, I can't guarantee that it would always be new vehicles. If before we get the building built, this could be an area where like lease returns could be stored to clear up our other sites.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying, Jim.
I'm going to call them dealer vehicles. So the point is, you can't store customer cars. They have to be dealer vehicles only. Does that work?
That's fair.
After existing structures are removed and for a maximum, does anyone have a proposed time frame? Does 24 months cause you an issue?
I'm assuming you're asking me that.
Yeah, Jim.
I'm asking Wester.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to say 36, just knowing how long it takes some projects to get off the ground.
I was gonna suggest 24 like you, and if they have to come back, they have to.
Right, yeah, I'm
Okay.
24.
So we'll
So
do
if
it.
we can't get it done in
You can
24.
come back to, right, you can come back to update your special use permit if there's an unforeseen delay.
That's fair.
Or let's see, storage of dealer vehicles on premises can occur after existing structures are removed for a maximum of 24 months or continuing once showroom is complete.
And because we are letting them store vehicles there now before the building's built, before they get approval from the planning board. Can we put a number 4 on there that the truck, so they'll have a place to park a truck and unload the truck?
All vehicle loading and unloading must occur on premises and not in the road.
Mr. Supervisor, it's Kevin Wilson again.
Yep.
Just one comment on the new section of code for vehicle storage. It does limit it to new cars and trucks only.
I understand that. Again, this is a future dealership.
Okay, just making sure we're clear on, okay, thank you.
Because again, this is in dealership row.
Yep.
We didn't want to turn other properties off of dealership row into used car lots. Is what the purpose of that was for. And the whole reason for that, if you recall, was because with the current chip shortages and other stuff, you know, the supply chain problems from the pandemic, dealership, if they got a shipment of cars, would take the entire shipment, even if they couldn't fit them on their lot. Because if they didn't take them then, they may not get them in the future. So that was the reason for the request for this offsite storage, was specifically to address the problems of the new car delivery. So this is more of some existing dealerships are going to spread out because they're, for lack of a better way to put it, busting at the seams. And so because it's on dealership row, I don't have an issue with it being dealership vehicles as opposed to new vehicles. But I don't know if others feel the same way.
Do we, did we say that vehicles could be sold at the property before the building is built or no?
That's not, to be honest, I don't see how that's up to us. Right? Most people, I think that gets into New York State's dealership rules.
I think it's reasonable to defer
Is
to
it?
state law on that.
Yeah. I think the state is pretty specific about that in terms of safes with regards to the location of the titles. I just remember this when we were going over the DioGuardi permit, that only the DioGuardi vehicles could be in the safe in the DioGuardi site.
Right.
So like I said, if New York State allows them to sell out of a parking lot, I don't personally have an issue with that. I don't know if others do or don't.
No.
Okay, so listening to what everyone said, I actually have the Word version of the resolution, so I just wrote it in here.
Okay.
Do you want me to read what I wrote, or do you want to read what you wrote, Supervisor?
So I'm happy to read what I wrote, and Don, if you want to, before I put it fully forward, I'm going to include any edits from Don.
Okay.
So, fellow board members, I have resolution 22-296, 2021 to issue a negative declaration and approve special use permit application number 2021-58 for Wester Automotive Group to build and operate a car dealership at 4600 West Henrietta Road. I am going to have that I'm going to read the conditions. 1, that any structures present on the property at the time of this approval be demolished and their debris removed. 2, that the development of the building is subject to site plan review by the planning board. 3, that the storage of dealer vehicles on premises can occur after existing structures are removed for a maximum of 24 months or continuing once the showroom is completed. 4, all vehicle loading and unloading must occur on premises and not in the road. Do you have any edits to that, Don?
Just a little one here.
Okay.
So, and feel free to object, but I just, hearing you said and hearing some of the other discussion, here's how I wrote 3. Dealership vehicles may be stored at the property prior to completing construction of the dealership building, but 1, only after the buildings have been, the existing buildings have been demolished and debris removed. 2, only so long as they are parked on paved surfaces. And 3, only for up to 24 months after issuance of this permit. Pretty close, but I added the additional thing in there.
So I will move my motion as amended by Town Attorney Don Young. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Anything online, Becky?
Nothing online.
Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Could you hold on one second?
Absolutely.
Or just raised his hand.
Don, you did have 24 months in there, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. That's all I
up to
wanted.
24 months after issuance of the permit.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead and continue. Please call the roll.
Let's try this again. Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye. So I will not be upset if there are bulldozers out there tomorrow. I know there has to be a bunch of remediation that has to be done first, but
Good to hear.
the sooner the better. So thank you, and thank you for, understanding where we're coming from and
Of course.
what we're trying to accomplish. Again, if you get to, if there continues to be delays in materials and other such that causes you to be delayed before that 24 months, prior to that expiring, come back to us for a potential extension.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That closes this application number 2021-58. Next up, we have a public hearing for proposed law to establish a community choice aggregation energy program. Come on up. So we have some individuals to present. Please introduce yourself, and I think, Becky, you have the presentation?
I do. I for some reason, the PowerPoint got corrupted, but I have the PDF version, so it should work just the same.
Okay, go ahead and introduce yourself.
So I am Shannon Bellamy. I represent Rocktricity. I'm also joined virtually by Sue Hugh Smith, who is another member of Rocktricity. We are partnered with Jewel Assets, who is a state authorized CCA administrator. And so today we have a presentation to show you, to go over what exactly the proposed community choice aggregation program is for the town of Henrietta and what that would look like with Jewel. So community choice aggregation, we can go on to the next slide as well. And we can pass that as well. We spoke shortly about this earlier in the week, but just so that everyone attending here and online knows, there's 2 different components to electricity for residents, and small commercial, and that is delivery services and supply services. So delivery comes from the utility. Nothing can change that, but individuals do have the choice over where they get their electricity supply from. And that's the portion that we are primarily focused on changing. So we can move towards the next slide. So community choice aggregation is a policy enabling municipalities to determine default energy offerings, including electricity supply and community choice solar on behalf of its residents and small businesses. So if we could go to the next slide. So this was authorized by the state in 2016. Since then, several municipalities in the area have moved forward with these programs. It allows municipalities to aggregate the energy demand of their residents in order to negotiate a bulk purchase. So just by pooling everyone's electricity demand, we're able to obtain fixed rates that help either save residents money or access offers that they wouldn't have elsewise if they were trying to get these offers on their own as individuals. So all customers are eligible to participate, but some are automatically included in the program as these are opt-out, and the rest may opt in based on their classification and other selections that they've made in the past. So we can move forward. So a little background on who we are and what we do. So first, Jewel is the state authorized CCA administrator. And so what they do is they would work with you in order to help obtain these electricity supply contracts, as well as do all of the regulatory work and things like that to make sure everything is filed with the state. So they do all of that background work. What they would do is they would go out to the market. They'd work with you to determine the terms that you would want. So typically for our contracts, we look for 100% renewable electricity at a fixed rate of 24 months. And then sometimes there's also built-in things where it has to be cheaper than the historic utility default or something like that. We'd negotiate those terms. We'd go out we'd issue an RFP. We'd get results back. We'd provide a recommendation. We'd sit down with you, show you your options. You would select one or not. If you selected one, we'd then move forward with a program. So that's kind of their role. And then Rocktricity, we are here locally in Rochester. We help with the communication and outreach for these programs. So if it's going to be a change for the residents, so we want them to know about it and understand. So we're right here and we would do all of that work on your behalf. So you don't have to worry about doing all of that. And is there any questions at this point before I go on just in terms of the two roles? Because I think that is important. And this also
The
gets,
only thing I'll just want to clarify, so anybody who effectively has already selected a specific ESCO is effectively already opted out of the program?
yes, they are not included automatically. They can switch and join later, but it does not interfere with any decisions that have already been made. This is just those who are on the default from the utility.
Right. Thank you.
And then moving forward on the presentations. So there's several benefits. We have two different offerings that we are coming to you with. One is the classic electricity supply, for which you see through most CCA programs. Benefits that include access to renewable electricity, as well as avoiding the market volatility by having those fixed rates. And then the other, which is unique to Jewel as a CCA admin, is opt-out community solar, in which residents access guaranteed savings off of their electricity bills. We'll talk about that later, but all of these help to reduce carbon emissions in New York State. They also guarantee consumer protections because the suppliers have been vetted by both the municipality and our company. So they don't have to worry about signing any individual contracts, nothing like that. And it's all on one bill. It's just on the utility bill. There's no second bill or any hassle like that. And there's also opportunities for the municipality to access more sustainability and clean energy funding through different methods, which we'll talk about here in a moment. And then we can go forward here. So the first one we'll talk about that is the electricity supply portion. So this is talking about that second part on the bill where I showed you where your electricity is coming from. So the CCA administrator, in this case, Jewel, would help the municipality obtain fixed rate renewable energy supply contracts with suppliers. So you would pick the offering that suits you best. You would set what you want that to be, and then we would go out, get those contracts for you, and then you would have the opportunity to sign one or not. Like I said, most of ours, 22 out of the 23 Jewel aggregations are 100% renewable, but that does not have to be the case. And typically the sweet spot is 24 months, though it could be 12 or 36, depending just what the best rate is really. And so that becomes the new default offering. Everyone has that as the default for their electricity supply. So unless they choose to opt out, that's just what your residents would see. And then next slide. Yeah, so all it does to the bill for what residents would see is that supply section of the bill is no longer in the same place on the bill. It typically moves to the last page and includes a message from the selected supplier saying, thank you for being a customer. And then it just pictures their electricity usage and then that fixed rate that is agreed upon by the municipality. And that's the only change for the supply portion of the bill. Then next slide. There's a lot of benefits for this. So the huge one is avoiding market volatility. Right now, residents just are passed along the cost of the electricity by the utility. So they have no idea what they're paying for electricity until the bill comes to them. This avoids that because they know exactly where their electricity is coming from, where it's sourced, and how much they're going to be paying for it. So that really helps people to understand their electricity bills and also know what they're paying for. And it also obviously helped the transition to renewable energy, which we believe is very important and can help support local jobs or a development in New York State for clean energy jobs and things like that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And you might be able to know this from a historic standpoint. I would assume typically what you're going to see is at the times when electricity is used more often, so like air conditioning season, the rates probably go up, and in air times when they go down, you see the rates go down. So even though, you know, as the CCA is drawn, there are times when the rates would be cheaper. Those are typically at the times when the consumer is not using as much electricity. And so the savings when the rate is cheaper than the higher end is actually outweighs that, because again, that's at time when their usage is going to be heavier.
Yeah, so
that correct?
it's important to note that usage will always impact both sections of your bill. If your usage is up, your supply and delivery charges will be up because it's all multiplied by that rate. But a lot of people don't realize how much their electricity usage varies throughout the year. But knowing at least what they'll be paying for what they're using,
Right.
I think that's the benefit.
But
there.
it's
And-
not just that, but my point being that the rates, what you have is the market in red, typically the rates go up at the time when everybody's using more electricity because of the laws of supply and demand, right? The supply is probably fairly constant, the demand higher, therefore the cost is higher.
Yeah,
Here we'd have a fixed rate, so that would no longer happen. So my point is, even though sometimes the market rate will be higher or lower, I'm more likely to save more money at the times when the usage is up than I am to, for lack of a better way to put it, lose when the market is down.
Yes, yeah, I believe that is true. I know that there's a lot of different things that influence the electricity market, and we are
Absolutely.
at a very weird time kind of coming out of this pandemic. But it does create a little bit more stability, and also, yeah, it
Right.
helps avoid.
So
some of that.
again, I'm just talking on a purely average historical, as the saying goes, your results may vary.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that is important to note with this electricity supply is that there's not a guaranteed savings. We do not guarantee that the fixed rate will always be lower than the utility rate because theirs is variable each month. There's no way to do that. So we cannot guarantee savings with this portion of the program, though we do aim for, we're trying to save people money, but there's not a guarantee. There are months where the utility may be cheaper. We're hoping that that's the minority, but there's no guarantee. And then we can move on to the next one. An important component of this program is access to clean energy communities funding, which is a NYSERDA grant program that has several different action items that the town can accomplish different items in order to gain points, which help unlock grant money. So at the first 3,000 points, small to medium municipalities can earn $10,000, and then there's additional action items that can bump up to 20, all the way up to $70,000. Clean or CCA with 100% renewable as the default gives you access to the highest action item point on that list. So if you do CCA, you already have more points than anything else you could do. So it's the single easiest action item to complete and start your way to get that money. And then we can go to the next one. And so now we'll talk about community choice solar, which is unique to Juul's programs. This is something that is new specifically on an opt-out basis. So we are currently launching 2 programs right now in the villages of Brockport and Lima that have the first ever of their kind opt-out community solar programs. And so in this case, it's very similar, but we would help the municipality to get a tri-party contract agreement with solar farms and developers currently within the utility that the customers would be in. And then those participants, which in this case, everyone who chooses or who doesn't choose to opt out, so everyone who is eligible would receive guaranteed savings off their electricity bill in the form of solar credits. So the solar farm generates credits, the utility applies them to their account, and then their savings, basically they just show up on the bill under the miscellaneous section for a total of 8 to 10% off of their electricity bill annually. That's kind of the standard across all different community solar projects of these type. And then again, it'll be on an opt-out basis. So when the program launches, everyone who is not already benefiting from solar in another form would be entered into this program and would start receiving credits once they're available.
Would that include people who were not in the CCA, or is it only the people in the CCA?
So it is completely independent. So we would have, we'd have basically two different lists of eligibility. There'd be a group of people who are eligible for one, and then a group of for just the supply, and then a group of people who are eligible for both, and then one just for solar. So yeah, your participation can vary. The municipality would have to do both. They'd have to offer both, but any individual could select whatever they'd like.
Right.
So if this is the guaranteed savings program too, so if they didn't want to risk it with the electricity supply, they could do only community solar and just get guaranteed savings and support clean energy in the community. So there's definitely options. It is community choice, what we like to highlight.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and then next slide. And so this is an example of how this would impact the bill. So there's typically a miscellaneous section. This is for RG&E specifically, but there's typically a miscellaneous section and then something that typically looks like CDG value stack credit, which is community distributed generation, another word for solar credits. And you would just see a negative value there on your bill, and that's it. It just shows up as a credit. Technically, they are paying to be a part of the solar farm, but the credits they're getting back is already being applied. So it all kind of happens in the background. They just see the savings. That's really all the change is there. And of course, this would also vary throughout the year. In the summer, there's more solar being generated. There's more solar credits. In the winter, less solar, less credits. Overall, 8 to 10% annually. So it works out in the end. And then next slide. So there's a lot of benefits of this. One of the biggest things is most homes here in New York State actually aren't designed or don't have good enough setup to actually install solar panels. So this allows those who want to benefit from solar to actually have access to this without having to install anything on their home, without having to put down that huge initial investment. Again, guaranteed savings, no maintenance, no sign up fees, no cancellation, and supports clean energy once again. So really they just are enrolled and that's all they have to do. They'll continue to see savings for the duration of the program.
And so if we know of a property, I've been in discussions with a property about, they've expressed some potential interest in putting a 25-acre farm on that. Would we put them in touch with you guys to help them
so it would
develop that?
depend. It would depend on their current contracts, but Jewel would work with them to see.
Oh, I meant, right. So right now they have no, I'm saying they'd be interested in having a company come in and put the farm in. So I personally hate calling them solar farms because I've done enough in agriculture.
Yeah.
You say that in front of Bob King, he'll give you a lecture on it. But that they'd be interested in putting in would essentially be a 5 megawatt solar array on their property for use in community solar.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
In which case, yes, Jewel would contract them. Of course, they'd have to come to an agreement in which we would hope to guarantee those savings. Obviously, we're aiming for those, so it would be contingent upon that. But yeah, they're more than welcome to, or more than happy to work with any preferred solar farms or developers to try to get that in place. Yep.
Sounds good.
Yeah, any other questions on the solar section? And then next slide. And then another really cool thing that Jewel does specifically is they have a giving back program in which they generate funds that go back to the municipality for a selected sustainability program of your choice. So the specifics of that would depend on the contracts. Once we kind of have everything set up, they would set either a per person enrollment benefit, or there would be a certain percentage, but there would be an agreed upon stream of revenue that would go to that. And at the end, you would have access to that money and be able to use it for whatever sustainability project you'd like. So we've done that in Geneva, and then we just finished up one in Monroe County as well. So that's just another benefit that goes back to the town just so that we can help support sustainability and clean energy and things like that. So that's just one more benefit. And then on to the next slide, please. In terms of who is automatically included, I think that's always important to know how people get entered into the program. So for the first section, electricity supply, as long as they have not already selected their own third-party supplier or ESCO, then they're eligible. And unfortunately, we cannot serve anyone who is participating in electricity or housing assistance programs such as HEAP. And that's because the state dictates that in order for them to participate, it has to be a guaranteed savings program, which the supply portion is not. The community solar portion is, but unfortunately, we are not able to serve heap for the supply only. And then with community solar, anyone can join as long as they're not already subscribed to a solar farm or do not already have on-site solar, because you can only benefit from solar in one form right now in the state. So those are the only things. There's two other, they also have to live within the town, and then they cannot have a block on their utility account. If they have a block, then we don't do anything to their account. Okay, and then next slide, please. So the overall steps, where this is kind of where we're at right now: pass a local law enabling yourselves to do this. And then the next would be to select a CCA administrator. And then finally, once that is done, pass a resolution outlining the program once we've gotten to that point and have the details of the program. And then after that, Jewel and Rocktricity, we take over from there, file everything with the state. We would be responsible for all of the outreach and education, things like that. Of course, we take we don't do anything without your approval. We would come back to you for everything. So you still have oversight over everything, as well as we're also regulated by the Public Service Commission and DPS. So there's a lot of different regulatory kind of steps and umbrellas. So there's no way we just kind of take this and run. It is still your program. We just kind of do all of the outreach and kind of annoying steps for you.
But another way, there's no way we would be able to negotiate all the regulatory hurdles by ourselves.
Yeah, and basically that's what we're helping you guys do this, so it doesn't have to consume all of your time.
Right.
But that's another thing we do, Rocktricity. We have a call center that is open every day of the week, so residents can call us if they don't understand their bill or if they don't understand the program or their options. We're right here, we're local. We'll come out, we'll table at farmers markets, we'll put ads in the newspaper, we'll do radio interviews. We can do it all you guys want, as much or as little as you want. That's kind of what we're here for. And then same with contracting, pricing and details. And then finally the program launch. And then after that, it's basically just making sure that everything continues to run smoothly. And then another thing I will say is these contracts, like I said, are typically 24 months. At the end of that contract, typically what happens is the municipality goes back out, issues another RFP, either for a new supplier with a new rate, or sometimes you can make deals with the existing supplier to negotiate a new rate. But it's your choice at that point if you want to extend the program or just end it. And that's also the same with selecting a CCA administrator. If you were to select Jewel as the CCA administrator, that contract is good for 18 months. If we can't get you an energy contract in 18 months, you have no obligation to do anything. And that's true for the local law as well. At no point until you sign an electricity contract are you obligated to move forward with anything. Okay, and then next slide. I believe that is all, yeah. And so is there any questions for me regarding either the local law or the programs or admin selection?
So the local law was pretty much standard.
Yeah, town attorney here, I had a chance to examine, so the state has a form local law, I believe it was developed, I want to say 2016, that they post and sort of say, hey, towns, you can start here. The CCA admin here has a form local law they seem to prefer. And then there are other municipalities in the area that have adopted local laws to do this. So I examined all of those and compared them. And in the end, they were very similar. They mostly had the same primary components. I found the administrator's proposed local law to be a little cleaner and more clear than the form from the state. Again, it was pretty similar anyhow. So the local law that's before you this evening is based on the CC admin's local law, which in turn is based on the state's form law. I had a chance to discuss over a fairly brief but productive phone call with the admin with Jewel and Rocktricity, sort of their position on this whole program. And I would say they answered all my questions to satisfaction. That doesn't mean that I've completely vetted every single possible thing here, but the things that came to mind that I asked, they were able to answer in a way that made sense to me.
And some of those would obviously need to be vetted before we would, so we've got to then sit down and put together the proposal that would actually go out. So even tonight.
Yeah, and I was talking about their work,
Right,
Steve.
no, right.
And you're talking about the next step after that, which would be putting together a contract with an energy supplier. Yeah, that there
No,
is.
even before that, it's putting together what we're going to go out for RFP, correct?
That is up to you. There's not many CCA administrators, so there's no requirement by the state to do.
No, you missed my
Oh,
point.
sorry.
If we select Jewel.
Yes.
The next step after that is to sit down with Jewel, go through all the stuff to put together what we want in the RFP that goes out to ESCOs.
Yes, we typically have a template again that we use, so it shouldn't be too intensive. But yeah, that is the next step, is just discussing what is your priority as a municipality for these programs.
And then the other thing being too, if this is a full contract, what we typically do is if we don't have the contract in hand ahead of time, we authorize the supervisor to enter in negotiations on the contract. And then basically the finalized contract typically comes back before the board for final acceptance. So depending on, where we're at so for instance, if we're gonna authorize us to select Jewel and Rocktricity, who is based on the recommendation from the Sustainability Committee, again, that would essentially authorize me to do the negotiations for the contract, but the final contract would come back before the town board for approval.
Yes, yeah, and we could also talk about that as well. Typically, when these electricity supply contracts come back, they are only good for a very short amount of time, typically 24 hours. So in some cases, we would get pre-approval from the board to have one
Well,
representative.
again, you're one step out. You're now talking about what happens when it comes back from the RFP.
Yeah, oh, yes, sorry.
I'm talking about the contract with Jewel.
Okay, yes, yeah, that's fair.
So I just point out that even if we select you, that authorizes us to enter into to negotiate a contract.
Yes.
So like when we go out to RFP, what typically happens is there's so many specifications within the RFP that we basically say that, in other words, we authorize us to enter into a contract that is consistent with what was in the RFP, right?
Yes.
If we're not going to go out to RFP, if we're going to just work off of the recommendations of the Sustainability Committee, then what I would want is when we are done with the contract, we bring it back to the town board, hopefully in 2 weeks, and approve it then. So just making clear
Yes,
where
yeah,
we're at in the
yeah,
process.
and
So
yeah, and that's.
the later stuff, yeah. So I mean, obviously, we go out to RFP, we typically authorize the town to enter, essentially to lock in the agreement based off of the specifications of the RFP.
Yes.
So as long as they meet the specifications of the RFP, we're authorized. If there's a deviation from that, then we have to come back to the town board.
Yeah, okay, yes, that is consistent with my experience as well.
Okay. I see that Sue Hughes Smith has her hand raised.
No, Steve, I lowered my hand because I understood your clarification. So you've got it correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Questions?
So one thing that you said to us, Shannon, during our workshop was during the give back program, where the town earns these credits to be used for projects that would benefit our residents. And you said that Geneva earned about 25K.
Yes.
For their program, and they use that for a watershed or something like that.
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
For watershed.
Yeah, I believe they did some sort of watershed like rehabilitation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I know that one of our others is done an arboretum.
I'm
or
picturing,
things like-
right.
Yeah.
Got it.
I just found that to be beneficial to our residents for other projects that we may want to have go forward in our for our residents through the sustainability. So that was a good example that you gave us. Thanks.
Yes, yeah, that is basically free money for you to do what you need to in terms of sustainability or.
I think
things like that.
Craig, Ms. Eckert has a question.
Hi, Becky. Craig Eckert, Deputy Town Supervisor. Based off the solar only, from what I'm understanding, we may not be a great fit for that. We may find more information. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but you have to be in the RG&E region to have the solar, right?
So that's a good question. Currently, as the state laws have it, you have to be within the same utility territory to access those solar credits. So your RG&E customers would need to access solar on RG&E grid. And the same is true for your other utilities. There's currently a bill at the state or a petition looking for cross-utility solar crediting. That has not been passed yet. There's nothing done with that yet, but we are monitoring it. But that is.
And hopefully that will change, but as of right now, there's no ability to service the town.
Just to be clear, there are two parcels, two property owners who have raised the question about applying for a 5 megawatt solar array, and they are both within the RG&E territory.
And that's great. I'm not sure, do you know if, I'm not sure they'd still be able to service the town. And we had a very high number, I believe, Jim Michaels, I apologize, I was a numbers guy with that. He had a very high number of what Delaware River Solar quoted, thought that we would need for solar for the residents of the town. And I forget if it was a 75% in, do you remember that number, Pat?
6 megawatts in the south.
Do me a favor, hold on, and come up to a microphone and introduce yourself first.
Delaware River Solar. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Pat Wardinger, Chair of Sustainability Committee. The Delaware River Solar Project is 6 to 7 megawatts, and that's in the southwest corner, and it's NYSERDA area, not RG&E, unfortunately.
Not
And
NYSERDA,
National
Grid.
National Grid.
Grid. And Delaware River Solar thought we would need 16 more of the same size, which seemed like a huge amount.
But
to
that was to
us.
supply all of the electrical need. My understanding of community choice solar, it doesn't necessarily replace all the need. It replaces a portion and you get credit for the portion that it replaces. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And I don't think there's anybody that doesn't want to get to that point. I just don't know how close we are to.
Well, I don't want 16 times 25
Right.
acres. So I don't want that in Henrietta.
No,
That's
so that's our point.
Wall-to-wall solar panels.
That's our point. So the community solar is definitely something we want to take a little more look at. But what I'm understanding is we're not close, and I'm not sure how close we are to getting, for the residents, a percentage of the residents that would be.
Well, keep in mind, the Delaware River Solar proposal was that they were going to supply all of the, in other words, they were going to do the community choice aggregate with solar only. We're talking about renewable only, and that renewable can come from outside the town for the ESCO. For community choice solar,
Right.
To my knowledge, it's never been a requirement that it be 100% of the town, or else essentially.
No, but
nobody would
even
get to use it.
even what we have, well, we don't have anything available right now, but even in the future, right, we might not even be at 10% of availability to the residents.
Mhm.
So,
Right, I understand what you're saying.
little, gray.
There's still savings though.
Across. I'm sorry?
There's still savings though.
There is absolutely still a savings. But the community choice with 100% renewable would be available to the
Right.
70, would be available to everybody. We're probably expecting anywhere from 50 or 70% opt-in, I think, if we're hopeful. Even if we went community choice solar, I don't really think that, say, 10% would.
No, again, you're talking two different things.
Well, the community, I'm sorry, the community solar portion doesn't have enough solar within the credit area to be able to service even, I think, 10%.
As
of
the
residents.
ESCO.
Right.
As community choice solar is separate than a solar provider being the ESCO for community choice aggregation. Those are, that's where the Delaware River Solar kind of confuses the stuff, because their proposal as as the CCA administrator was they were going to supply their plan. They talked about they were going to supply all the power from those solar arrays, but that they wouldn't have enough. And so in the meantime, they would supply it. They weren't clear as to what they would use instead.
Right.
Community choice, that would be community choice aggregation supplied by solar. We're talking about community choice solar, which basically says any of the solar that can be produced from a community choice farm earns you credit on your bill, essentially.
Yeah, and I can provide some clarification as well. So RG&E territory, there is a lack of solar. That is definitely true, and that's true for all different aggregations in RG&E territory. And so if that were to be the case, if for some reason the ones that you know of aren't actually online or don't come online, we could move forward first with only the supply portion and then work on electricity supply contracts, get those in place so that they can start to be built. And then as soon as they come online, we start distributing out those community solar credits. So it's our position that the sooner you start these contracts with solar developers, the sooner you get that solar online.
Sure.
So that would, if there was no solar available whatsoever, we could do supply only and then offer solar later, if that were the case.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your clarification. I understood that also, Craig. Now, as I was getting ready to come to this meeting tonight, there was a guy in my neighborhood going door to door for solar.
Yes.
Leaving his card. He wanted to see everyone's bill to make sure we're getting the credits for solar. What is that about? I didn't get to talk to the guy.
So there's a lot of solicitation for third-party electricity suppliers, ESCOs, and community solar. Lots of door-to-door, lots of phone calls, very annoying. That's actually where our guaranteed savings comes from community solar, because we save the developers all of that customer acquisition cost. They spend so much money trying to get those customers.
Mhm.
We just hand them to them. We come in with the whole municipality and assume, 50 to 80% participation. So they have different contracts each. And I think this is one of the important benefits of community choice aggregation, because the individual doesn't have to trust that salesperson at their door. They can trust the town and the town's program with the guaranteed savings.
Mhm.
So I think it helps to avoid that, but it also helps just with customer satisfaction and just knowing that they can trust what's going on,
Yeah.
because people are very confused when it comes to electricity. It's a confusing topic, and
Right.
people get overwhelmed, which is why that we here at Rocktricity kind of help support these programs and help educate people on these things like that.
Well, that was my mindset that I told my wife, well, the town's working on a sustainability renewable energy program, so we'll be covered under that.
Yeah,
And
and
there's
we
no
do
need
get
for me to speak to this guy right now. I didn't have time anyway.
we get a lot of calls like that, and we're able to educate people that no, that's not the municipal's program. That's a separate program.
Right.
Be careful of the contract terms.
Right.
you know?
Right.
Rob,
Well,
I'm
thanks
not
for
aware that
explanation.
we've allowed or granted a permit for any company like that to go door to door. in the
Doesn't mean
town.
that they don't, or that you get the phone call. We understand your community
like
choice
selling
solar is
vacuum
about to
cleaners.
expire.
Right. Well, I've yelled at one or two. They've been a little aggressive from comments that we've received. So
Really?
I've had to call.
I've
and-
got a piece of paper that was a card that I'll share
I
another
can,
time.
yeah, if you've got the company name, I'll check with Kevin, and
Okay,
they shouldn't be going door to door without a permit.
right.
So I was curious about the education piece because ESCOs kind of have a bad name because of those door-to-door people and the sales and everything. I guess I don't want any, for our community members in general to be surprised by
Yes.
this. So I'm thinking that's part of the education piece, but if you could just give me a few examples or details. about
Yeah,
that.
so once we have a program we're to the point where we're getting programs, we start with a 60-day outreach and education period. And that's where we start notifying residents that, hey, this program is coming. We might not have specific details yet, but look at this cool thing that the town has now done. This will be coming, watch out for it. Another thing that we do is when the program is launching, we send everything on municipal letterhead. signed typically by the town supervisor. So when it comes in the mail, they know it's not junk, they know it's official, they kind of know things like that. As a program is launching, we do a 30-day opt-out period. So, there's always going to be people that are frustrated when something changes. And so we let them know, we send everyone a letter to their home with the municipal letterhead and everything like that, that says this program is here. It is the town's program. Here's all the information. If you would like to opt out, here's a card, here's a phone number, and here's a website. You have so many different options. So they get something straight to their door. And then they're typically also notified by the utility if their enrollment is changing. So they'll get that as well. But then during that period, we also try to do as much outreach and education as possible. We are also regulated by the New York State Department of Public Service on what we have to do for outreach and education, which those are some of them. But we also typically do ads in the newspaper. We'll do radio interviews. We typically table at farmers market. We'll join community events or small organizations to talk about it. We try to do as much as possible to let people know what's happening. We also monitor social medias. We have Facebooks, Instagrams, Twitters, YouTube pages, websites for everything. We'll if there's comments going on social media and there's misconceptions, we'll try to address those professionally to try to get away from any, misconceptions specifically regarding ESCOs, because there is a lot of fear when it comes to electricity supply companies. That's true. So we try to do our best to combat that. But then again, also when it comes to outreach and education, if you all had any requirements or suggestions or things that you would like to see done, we would be happy to do that as well. So there are some state regulations that we follow. There's best practices that we follow. And then we also take any advice or feedback from like the sustainability committee or anyone that knows groups that might be good to speak out to.
So I do have one, we'll call it stronger than a suggestion. So we've got the town newsletter. Next issue is coming out in December 1st. Craig is going to be working with Pat to put in a section on some of the sustainability efforts, and specifically there's going to be a large section dedicated to this. So information that would make sense to go out prior to anything being finalized. So just the early, we'll call it the first education piece, that goes out to every resident in town.
Great. Yes. Yeah. And that would be
But
perfect.
just to be clear, even though it comes out in first week in December, you'd have about 2 weeks to get that material in.
Yeah. And we can do that. We can work on short
So
notices too.
coordinate that with Pat and Craig.
Great.
And maybe I misunderstood from what you said
Mhm.
the other night to just now. Did you say there's a 30-day opt-out? Or
Yes,
can
so there-
people- I thought people could opt out at any time.
Yes, you can. So before the program even starts, we send everyone a 30-day opt-out notice. So telling them that their enrollment is going to be changed, they will be entered, they're set to be entered into this program without them having to do anything. And so we give them 30 days before their account is ever touched to opt out and leave before it starts. Then after that period, everyone who is set to be enrolled is enrolled. They can still opt out or change their enrollment at any time, but that just lets them out before the program ever starts.
Okay, thank you. That's
So
just
as
clarifying.
easily as they can opt out, can they opt back in?
Yes, yep. They can opt in and out at any time. There's no fees or anything like that. The only caveat is that changing any of your electricity information, it typically takes a month or one billing cycle for those to change. So if they forget to opt out, end up in the program and want out, it might be another bill before they're out. So that's the one thing, but we do also try to communicate that as well in all of our correspondence. So they can opt in and out as long as the program is available for the exact same rate. So if they really wanted to, they could try to play the electricity market and gauge, the rates and everything, but yep, it's completely up to them for participation.
Just out of curiosity, for the community choice for the electricity supply, 100%, aiming for 100% renewable. What is your definition of renewable? I mean, solar is pretty easy to wrap your head around, but I was just wondering what other examples.
So we typically use wind, solar, hydroelectric, and it's typically those three. Here in New York State, almost all of it that we've contracted with is coming from hydro, just with all of the small kind of like more actually like smallly owned hydro facilities is a lot of what we'd be supporting. But it can also include wind and solar. Those just typically happen to be smaller percentages.
Nuclear is not considered to be.
No,
renewable
we
fuel.
do not
Okay.
consider nuclear to be 100% renewable in our programs. And I guess in terms of 100% renewable, when we go out for an RFP with the electricity suppliers, we can, if you've decided you only want 100% renewable, that's all we'll look at. But sometimes we also have an option of 50% renewable. That's for maybe a cheaper rate that people can choose to opt down to. And sometimes we also offer a fixed rate default supply. So non-renewable, but maybe cheaper or at least fixed compared to utilities. So those are also options as well, depending on what the electricity suppliers have to offer.
And
But
that'll be our decision as to
Yes.
which of those routes we go.
yes,
Okay.
but I will say again, the 100% renewable is required for those NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities grants. So that's
get it.
typically what we go with, just because you can access that money, but you do not have to.
Okay.
Anything from the audience? Anything online? Anything else from the town board? So then hearing none, unless there's an objection, I'm closing the public hearing for the proposed local law to establish a community choice aggregation energy program. Hearing no objections, public hearing adjourned. So again, we will be, we have a couple resolutions with regards to this as well later. Finally, we have the public hearing for the proposed 2022 preliminary budget. Would you please bring up the budget presentation? Linda, do you want to walk this or do you want me to walk it?
Doesn't matter. You can go.
So feel free to chime in at any time.
I will.
Go ahead. Next slide. So one of the things to note, last year when we were looking at this year's budget, we took a number of measures to budget conservatively. So we removed a couple big ticket items. We reduced the growth rate of other items, and we assumed the revenues would be closer to their call it post-pandemic 2020 levels rather than the pre-pandemic 2019 levels. So that's what we had done with regards to this year. As a result of that, we ended up in good financial status this year. Next slide. So basically what you'll see is all of our expenses, we're currently under budget. And I will note that again, obviously we have some to go. We've tried to project out as best as possible. From the revenue side, the general revenue is up because the economy recovered faster than I think most people expected it. So you saw a good boost in sales tax revenue, but revenues for most other things were under, whether that's program events or highway funding, external library funding, stuff like that. So next, if anybody has a question on any of these, feel free to interrupt. So this is just a quick overview of some of the major projects we did. We did more paving this year than ever in the history of the town. A huge credit to the highway department. We've been adding staffing. They've also been looking at newer methods, newer machines, better deployment, and like I said, record number of new pavement. We've added a number of new sidewalks. We are in the process of building the new facilities garage. The masonry is in, and our town staff are building the wooden portion, the upper portion of the building. We put in a new culvert bridge into Veterans Memorial Park, so that we no longer have a single point of access, which was always dangerous during the hugely crowded 4th of July events. We built I guess you could call it Four Seasons since it's heated, room in the off the senior center. We are currently in the process of installing the play pods / exercise trail out in Breeze Park. And we upgraded a number of pump stations in town. Next slide.
Can I interject?
What's it?
Can I interject?
Absolutely.
I think I remember from last year, our crews did more roads than they ever did before during COVID, right? And now we surpassed that even this year.
I think we are almost double of what we'd ever done in the past, but I'm not positive it's quite that high. Tim, are you on?
Yes, I am, Supervisor.
Could you give the number? Because it's a pretty astounding amount of pavement you guys achieved.
Last year, we did 7,962 tons. This year, we put down over 11,200 and change.
Wow,
Impressive.
great job.
Great job to all the
Thank
work.
you.
Very good.
Thanks.
So the total preliminary budget or the proposed budget is 24.5 million. That's a decrease of about $500,000 from the previous budget. And unfortunately, that camera's right in front. I can't read
Can't see it.
the notes.
Move it.
Actually,
The actual 2021 expenditures are not finalized.
okay, thank you.
Should I not move it?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Next slide. So this just shows the newest is on the left. You'll notice the one on the far right included the large project for the new library. But basically, you know, as you can see, obviously the first pandemic year, when stuff was shut down, we greatly reduced expenses. We brought some of those back up last year. And again, basically because of where capital projects fall, we're down a bit from, and some other expenses were down a bit from last year. Next slide. So one of the things I always like to explain is the difference between the tax levy and the tax rate. The tax levy is basically how much we collect in property taxes. So that is determined by the budget. We're going to set that dollar amount. There's a belief that when we reassess, it's so we collect more money. We don't. The amount of money we collect is set at this time. If the assessed values of properties go up or there's new construction, that means the rate comes down because that collection is spread out over more properties. And so basically the tax rate is calculated by taking that tax levy and dividing it by the total assessed value of all taxable properties. I say taxable properties because obviously any tax exempt properties are excluded from that calculation. It's generally expressed as an amount per thousand of assessed value. So for instance, if you had a $4 million tax levy and 3.2 billion in taxable properties, the tax rate would be $1.25 per thousand. And just to make it clear, if the assessed values went up to 4 billion, your rate would drop to $1, right? Next slide. So a lot of politicians talk about they didn't raise taxes, and what they often mean is that they didn't raise the tax rate. In a time period when house values are steady and stable, that could be true, right? However, anytime property values are soaring like they are now, if I keep the tax rate flat and I reassess your property, that means you are being taxed more. And not just, you know, now one of the things you talk about the difference between an individual property and the whole town. But the point of that total assessed value has gone up because of reassessment. That amount it goes up by reassessment, that's essentially a new tax if I hold the tax rate flat. So what we've been trying to do is hold the tax levy flat, because if we collect this exact same amount, then we collect no new taxes. We're not always going to be able to do that, but for these past 4 years, so every single budget that this administration has put forward has been for the exact same tax levy. Again, I don't know if we'll be able to do that next year. It totally depends on the strength of the economy. And, you know, at the same time we've been doing that, we have been growing the town. And obviously there's also increases in pay, there's increases in health insurance costs, material costs, everything else. So the budget, a lot of the stuff has gone up, but we've been able to manage it well so that we have not been increasing any taxes. Next slide.
Can I interject?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, for keeping our levy flat, and to our Finance Director, Linda, also, great job for 4 years.
Next slide. So as I kind of already let the cat out of the bag, the projected tax levy increase is once again $0.00 so for the 4th year in a row, the projected tax levy is $4.3 million. Next slide. So this is just the tax cap calculation. As you can imagine, if you're holding the tax levy flat, you're under the tax cap. Now, I will point out it's not quite that simple because it goes into some other, it's not just the primary tax levy. There's other things that go into that calculation, but again, we are under the tax cap. Next slide. Again, we are have the best rate in the entire county other than Riga. And the reason Riga has a property tax of 0 is they have a giant landfill that effectively pays all the property tax. Next slide.
Well,
What's it?
back up one, back
Go
up.
back for a second.
And that is, it's about half of the next one. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right. So everyone is at least twice as much as.
Yep. Next slide. So basically the new tax rate, we're expecting to see about decrease of approximately 1.66%. So the anticipated rate, and we won't know this number until it comes back from the county because they do all the final tax roll calculations, but our anticipated rate is about $1.19 per thousand. I will note that that is lower than the rate it was a decade ago. So a decade ago, the rate was $1.20 and we'd be at $1.19.
Excellent.
And that's even after the addition from building the brand new library. Next slide. So one of the things looking at this is the different funds that go into that. And unfortunately, that's too small for me to read. I'll bring that up. Linda, do you want to address this one since I can't see it from here?
Yeah, basically the appropriations are going to be about 18.8 million. $1.5 million of that is taken out because it's basically double counting because it's the general fund giving money to other funds, but then they show up in the other funds as expenditures. So for purposes of the budget, it's really not a budget item because it becomes a budget item in the other funds. So it's government accounting, it is what it is. And then the estimated revenues coming in on the 3 major funds, the general highway and library come about to 13.5. We're going to apply some fund balance and that gets us back to holding the taxes flat. The funds on the lower half, the consolidated sanitary sewer.
Hold on one second. Can you go to the next slide?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can't see
There,
that.
I guess we don't have that.
Yeah, because those really aren't all that important.
Right. Don't tell Mike Catalano that.
Sorry, Mike. They're pretty much all flat. And then as a process that we have to do to calculate what our fund balance is going to be at the end of 22, it's a reflection of what we estimate expenses to be in 23. So we looked at a trending analysis and we came up with a number where we think our expenditures will be in 23. And that gets us to about 20.25% for our aggregated fund balance. Our fund policy that we put into effect back in 2019 says we have a floor of 19 and a ceiling of 25. That puts us in there. So we're
the target was 20 with a
Target
floor of
was
19 and
20, but
25.
yes.
And the thing I'll note, if you remember, we do that aggregate because whereas you can at any time move money from general into the library, from general into highway, they can't go back the other way easily. So basically, we look at that as an aggregate, that the 3 of those together come to 20%. And then as needed, we transfer money to the other departments as needed.
Right, so the picture that you're seeing is a little deceiving. There's obviously going to be a fund balance in the two, but it'll be how much the general fund puts into those two to give it a fund balance. But
Right.
For purposes of this, we just zero that out and put it all in general to give you a picture as opposed to guessing at the other two.
Okay, next slide. So one of the things, so the top graph is showing what happened. That's basically what our total assessed value has been. The properties have gone up a bunch. You'll notice that it has dropped off a little, whereas that doesn't seem to reflect what the housing market has been doing. But one of the key things is there are a number of major projects that have moved over to the pilot role. So they appear on a different part of the chart, or to the tax exempt. So for instance, one of the big ones being the U of R project at the mall. So all of Sears has moved over. That was for 1 year. It had jumped onto our tax rolls and then moved off this year. So previously it had been under a pilot, came out, was part included, and now it's back. Essentially now it's under the U of R's blanket. So,
And I don't have that report in front of me, but that one alone, for example, was over $14 million.
right. So that's why basically in 2021, it was a little bit up because there were a couple of those that came in, as well as that's when the majority of the new RG&E Rochester Area Reliability Project kicked in. So last year saw a greater than normal bump. But if you look at the flat line, it's pretty much in line with what we've been seeing from historical growth. Again, last year was the anomaly. We had extra growth last year because of a number of things that were happening with regards to pilots and shifting in and out. And again, the Rochester Area Reliability Project was a significant addition to our tax rolls. The middle shows what our tax levy is, and as you can imagine, it's a flat line because we've seen zero growth for the past 4 years. So what that means is, next slide. This is what our tax rate's been doing. So yeah, it's pretty much take the top chart and flip it upside down. So as the total assessed value goes up, if the tax levy stays the same, the tax rate drops at the same rate. So that's what our tax rate's been doing for the past 4 years. Next slide. Going back to those other areas that Linda was talking about. So for drainage, the rate remains the same as 2021. The levy slightly increases by about 4,500, but that's from new units only. So if you remember, if you're familiar with your tax bill, drainage and sewer are essentially per property rates for residential. So as new homes have come on board, you'll see an increase in the amount we collect in drainage. And as new sewer, same thing, as new homes come on and get added to the sanitary sewer, we get additional collections there as well. In some past years, we were able to drop the rate some because we've found some both operational savings as well as there were excess fund balances. So we've been using that to reduce the burden, but we've essentially used up all of those excess fund balances. So this year, and savings. So this year, the rates will stay the same. But like I said, we'll actually collect a little bit more because there are, I don't remember what it was, 50, 60 new houses that are now connected and therefore paying the charges. And then for the parks, the levy and rate remains the same as in 2021 because there were no new properties added to an existing park district. Next. So this just goes through the details of how we distributed the preliminary budget and the process. And so, again, basically, we're now at this step where this is the hearing on the proposed budget. And if we adopt the budget tonight, it will become our adopted budget for next year. Next slide. So a couple of things to note. We've added 2 individuals to buildings and ground maintenance. We talked about this in the past. One of the issues we've had is we've been dissatisfied with the service of some of the folks who've been cutting the cul-de-sacs. And so we've decided to take that internally instead of farming it out. So we're going to add an individual. They'll do all those as well as help out with the other mowing. And again, we also have some additional, would have some additional support for facility maintenance because we've been adding facilities. And so in addition, we're looking to add 1 in the highway department. Some of it's a shift around in terms of the absolute total number of positions are the same, but 1 individual moved into a new role. And rather than decrease the number of the equipment operators, we're actually replacing that. So effectively we're +1. And again, that's so that we can keep up with the plowing and paving, especially because, as you know, there's new developments in town, add new lane miles. For years, even though that was happening, we weren't expanding the highway department. We've been working on that with the goal of getting to the point where we have sufficient crews to plow the main streets and the side streets at the same time instead of in sequence, which can cause problems on heavy snowy mornings. So next slide. There's a number of capital equipment and capital outlays in there. Some of them are essentially already approved. And then there are a couple that we made note that we included them in the budget, but they have not, they basically will require subsequent approval, or in one case, like the TAP grant, that requires us getting the funding from New York State. Included in that was, as we discussed, the Chapman Corner Park, the additional park enhancements regarding the tennis courts and or basketball courts. Again, I mentioned the sidewalk. Those were the ones that we basically require further approval. We've already talked about approved essentially renovations that are required at Good Shepherd to bring it up to public use. And then, we are going to go back out. We went out to bid on the sewer and drainage garage. Because of all the material shortages, the prices were way out of whack. We just had a meeting today on how we can bring some of that costs down, but we're also hoping that some of the material costs have come down, and we're going to go out at a better time of year when businesses tend to be more hungry. And so we're hoping we can get a bid response that's within our price range. If they again come in too high, then we would not accept any of the bids and try it again, sometime later when it's reduced. Linda?
Yeah, and as a reminder, there is some money that has already been moved over to a capital project 2 years ago for this. And as Steve said, the bids came in too high last year. What we know is we didn't have enough money in there, so that's the additional money. We did use some of that money for architects. We did it from some abatements and a few other things that needed to happen.
Surveyors and
the surveyors and the building to come down.
essentially the
So-
site work that is necessary. Next slide.
Can I interject?
Absolutely. I'll go back one.
Is there any preliminary inclusion for the sheriff detail?
No, that's not, but that's not I'd originally put it on there and Linda pointed out, it's neither an equipment nor capital outlay. So
Okay.
that's why it's not on this.
Different
slide.
spot? Okay,
And-
thanks.
I thought you were going to ask a question on the Chapman Corners. Maybe
That's both. Remember, there was one bucket for acquisition of the property and one bucket for improvements. We just put them together.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, next slide. So this is the breakdown of the preliminary budget, and let me get to that slide, because again, I can't. That's funny, the colors change when you move it.
Right, so the majority of obviously the majority of our expense is our people, right? It's all of our personnel, although government likes to call it personal services instead of personnel.
Drives us nuts.
So what I would guess to be cranberry wine is the personal services, and then moving up to the lighter blue / gray are all the insurance and the benefits associated with that. So that's the majority of the expense. And then if you go around the top, the capital outlay are some of the things that we had showed you on the page before, and other things that are in the budget, right? We know what trucks are being replaced next year. We know, what other work that has to be done. So that's what that capital outlay is. Capital projects are some of the things that were there too, that we're referring to. The sewer garage would be a capital project, for example. Coming around the corner, contractual services are everything else. They're all other 1099 type things. Included in this is the town's portion of funds that go to the ambulance. And then coming around debt service, that's the debt service on our library, and then some equipment purchases that we know, again, are in the budget, whether it be additional computers or here's where, the trucks would be or something like that.
The colors have changed. What?
Yeah, I'm looking at
What page?
No, you had, right. So it's on page 5 of 25 on what you're looking at. And the colors change when you copy it from, it goes by, it's Microsoft. As I always used to joke, we know what you want to do.
Yeah.
That's their motto, but. Okay, next slide. No, go further back, Mike. It's labeled page 3 on the PDF, but there you go. That's it. Okay.
And this slide basically shows of the taxes. Now, I looked at 2021 tax bills, right? I looked at the 2021 school bill and the 2021 town and county bill. And this is the pie of what makes up each entity that gets the money. How much goes to the county, how much goes to the ambulance, the fire district, the school, and then the town's portion of what Henrietta residents and businesses pay is 4% goes to the town to fund this.
So, one of the things I hear sometimes is people come in and say, I pay $10,000 in taxes. I demand this. I say, actually, to the town, you pay about $400. It's not even that. It's like $360. For all the services that this town puts forth, it is an amazing deal to the residents. And that's been a long history in this town, and this administration has striven hard to keep that going forward while still providing additional services.
And that's just why I moved from the city when their taxes went up in 1988 to Henrietta, because these taxes came down.
Next slide.
So that's why everyone wants to live in Henrietta. We have a great town.
So these are the ones we know about. So basically the central school district, their tax rate actually went down slightly, even though the tax levy went up by 2%. And the reason is that the growth in the town was greater than 2%. For the town, the tax rate is lower, again, by about 1.7%, but the levy itself is $0 and change. For both drainage and sewer, $0 change in the rate. The Henrietta Fire District, based on their preliminary budget. Now, we had to do some calculations here because their budget now includes West Brighton Fire Protection District. So they are holding the rate the same. So 3.18 and change. We then took what their total assessed value was in Henrietta, multiplied it by that rate, did the same calculation for the 2022, did the difference. That's the growth in the levy. So again, that 2.44 is roughly what you're seeing in the growth of the town because they held the rate flat. Some of that's new property, some of that's reassessment. But compared to the previous year, it's phenomenal. And if they can achieve this every year, I'll be a happy camper. But one of the things I will note in their levy, you'll see that the levy increases by something like 13%, but that's because that other 11% comes from Brighton, not from Henrietta. In the CHS mobile, the tax rate increases slightly. The levy increases by 3%. So again, that's based on a calculation and formula we put in place some time ago. And we, try to keep that down. But basically what that covers is lift assists, co-payments for any Henrietta resident that's being transported to the hospital. They basically keep that fund, they charge against us, they give us quarterly statements on that, and they give us an end of year audited financials. So those services, you only get them if you're a Henrietta resident. If you're visiting somebody in Henrietta, you don't get that. It's only if you're a resident. And the Monroe County tax is not out yet, so don't know what that's going to be. Next slide.
That's it.
That's it. Any questions?
I just really appreciate the work that both of you have put into being able to put together not only an excellent budget, but an excellent way of presenting the budget that is clear and understandable for all members of our community. So really appreciate that.
One of the things we didn't have in the presentation, there were no increases in salaries for elected officials. Is that correct? Or did we increase judges?
That is correct. It's in the budget. We haven't put that in the presentation.
Right.
So no elected officials.
No
received
elected
it.
officials increase in salary.
Excellent.
So
Is,
You want to talk in your mic?
yeah, I got it right here.
Oh, there's one here too. I didn't know you had that one.
Do we have any, we obviously don't have a contract yet, so is there any room in there for, let's say, next year's, let's say there's something that we end up deciding on, or?
it's based off of the current discussions, which, as you know, we're really, really close.
Okay.
So we've essentially, to my knowledge, agreed to the numbers for next year. It's some numbers from this year is where we're, the only place we're in disagreement. Any other questions? Anything online? Anything from the audience?
I want to thank Linda and you and the department heads also for all
Yeah.
working hard on this and getting it done. I think, our employees, working harder, working smarter, we're able to keep the costs down, and a big thanks to all of them.
Yeah, one of the things that we changed, we were actually shocked when we found it wasn't this way. We actually involve all the department heads from the beginning in putting the budget together. It made no sense to us to dictate to the departments what their budgets should be. They have a better feel of what's in there is useful and not useful, and what, we have them put together wish lists, and they do a great job of putting that all together and figuring out how to most efficiently spend taxpayer money, because that's one of the things we make it clear. It's not our money, it's taxpayer money. And our department heads do a great job with that. It's a months-long process. And they also think about it all year long. They'll come to us all the time with ways that we can improve things going forward and putting it in next year. we have one of our department heads right here. I'm gonna maybe make her blush, but Adrian's a perfect example of that. Even with all the additional services the library offers and the growth in the new library, they've held their expenses flat because again, they've gotten more efficient as to how they do stuff. Will we always be able to do that? Of course not, right? You can only, there's a law of diminishing returns in regards to that, but we do that wherever we can find it. And that really helps out the taxpayers. And then again, as we then roll all that up, those savings, it might even be a little bit here and a little bit there, but across all the departments, all the sub departments, it really adds up. And that's essentially how we're able to keep the tax levy flat, is because of their hard work in putting that together. And again, you go out to those departments and they do the same thing, right? They involve their people who are out on the front line saying, hey, how can we do this smarter? Right? As you said it, you don't have to work harder, you have to work smarter, right? Sometimes there are periods when you have to work harder, but but for the most part, from a budgeting standpoint, it's just being smarter about how you spend the tax dollars. So huge props out to the department heads as well. They play a big part in that. And, again, as I've said, she doesn't like to get praised, but this wouldn't be possible without Linda, which is why when I first got elected and found out that I got sole appointment of my finance director, I reached out to her and convinced her to take a big cut in pay to come work here. So
I will also echo those sentiments about Adrian and the library and our department heads and our highway. Man, I didn't think they would have done 11,000 tons, which is like 4,000 tons almost over last year on our roads. Our residents are really happy about all the roads being repaved and done. And it's really a joy to see, and it's nice to ride over them, right? I just got an email from someone that was talking about how the sewer flushing in their neighborhood, because they had some flooding, is really good. So our sewer department does a great job. So our employees work very hard, and I like to say thank you for all that you do, and to all the department heads, and this budget and keeping this levy flat is very, very important to us. And this board is very conservative in what we do. So we try to help our residents out, and because money doesn't grow on trees.
I want to thank everyone as well, Supervisor Schultz, Linda. I know, how hard you've worked, and the departments as well. It's just a great town to be able to have all that we have and have such a low tax rate is just amazing. And I think that's what draws so many people to this town. So thank you very much.
And since we're doing the group patting on the back, I'm going to add the town board in here. When we go through this,
Going to say that I would like to thank the
Yeah.
town board for all of their support, their guidance, and going through the process with me.
we spent an entire day, morning to night, going through this. I'm basically putting this whole thing together, going through all the wish list items, figuring out which ones we can and cannot cover. It's not a small task. So, and they don't work full time like us. Well, they do, just at other jobs.
Yeah.
So again, I certainly put a lot of extra hours on the town board's plate. I know they're more than, they'd be mad at me if I didn't. But like I said, they definitely put in a lot of work, and kudos to this board for all they did with helping us with this. So anything further? And hearing no objections, I'm going to close the public hearing for the proposed 2022 preliminary budget. Can I get my next resolution?
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 22-294, 2021. Whereas Christopher Brown has achieved the rank of Eagle Scout and Boy Scout Troop 401. And whereas to achieve that rank, Christopher earned merit badges in 36 different disciplines, including citizenship in the world, space exploration, and rifle, some of his favorites, helping him earn bronze, gold, and silver palm awards. And whereas during his time in Scouts, Christopher held the positions of den chief, patrol leader, senior patrol leader, and achieved NYLT certification. And whereas Christopher graduated from Rush Henrietta in 2021 and is now attending Clarkson University, where he is studying aeronautical engineering. And whereas for his Eagle Scout project, Christopher built a new picnic table and refurbished 2 additional tables for the fire department so the firefighters could have more outdoor seating during the pandemic. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board joins Henrietta Fire Department 1, sponsors of Troop 401, in recognizing the achievement and honor of Christopher Brown in attaining the rank of Eagle Scout.
Second. So with both of these Eagle Scout recognitions tonight, they're ones who basically their court was delayed due to COVID. So both of them are attending college, couldn't be here, but we'll be getting the certificates out to them. And as I've said, you probably get tired of hearing me say this. I always feel like such a slacker when I listen to what some of these guys do, some of these kids.
I'd like to say congratulations to Christopher Brown. I think I ran across his mother on the doors and she was very proud of him too. And she wanted to come to this, but he's out of town. So she did invite everyone to come to the ceremony.
I am just so impressed with the highly active scouts that we have in Henrietta. We have had so many young people achieving the rank of Eagle Scouts from Henrietta, and every one of them deserves the recognition for all of the hard work they've put in. So congratulations, Christopher. What you've done is amazing, and I wish you the best in your studies at Clarkson University.
I was going to add what Millie just said. I see that the scouts are very active in Henrietta. I didn't, don't know if they're that active in other communities or not, but it's just great to see.
I think that's a great testament to the leaders, the scout leaders that we have out there, just to show how motivated they get these kids to achieve these ranks. They're just incredible. I mean, I don't think getting this rank is something that happens every day to a lot of people. It's something that they really have to work at. And what an accomplishment. It's really, really impressive. And congratulations, Christopher.
To put it in perspective, less than 5% of all Boy Scouts achieve the rank of Eagle. So it's pretty impressive. Any further discussion? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 22-295, 2021. Whereas Ryan Patrick McMaster has achieved the rank of Eagle Scout and Boy Scout Troop 332, and whereas to achieve that rank, Ryan earned merit badges in 26 different disciplines, helping earn a Bronze Palm Award for his merit badges. And whereas during his time in Scouts, Ryan held the positions of Patrol Leader, Assistant Senior Patrol Leader, Historian, and Scribe. Whereas Ryan graduated from Rush Henrietta in 2021, where he was a member of the National Honor Society and twice was awarded the Presidential Award for Education Excellence, and is now attending RIT, majoring in software engineering and minoring in Japanese. And whereas for his Eagle project, Ryan created a catalog photo album of the tombstones of those who have been laid to rest at Riverview Cemetery in Henrietta. Under his leadership, volunteers helped take approximately 200 photographs of tombstones. Ryan subsequently created a map complete with corresponding letters and numbers to facilitate families' abilities to more easily locate their loved ones. A photo album was created, including special military page and can be viewed at the town historian's office in Tinker Nature Center. A total effort of 70 hours was involved in making this project come to fruition. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board joins the Loyal Order of Moose Family Center 2290, Genesee Valley, Henrietta, sponsors of Troop 332, in recognizing the achievement and honor of Ryan Patrick McMaster in attaining the rank of Eagle Scout.
Second.
So again, amazing work. I'm glad we have our town historian here. You know, he's done a lot of work, and I'm sure there's a little bit of pride that he was historian in his pack. So our again, this is another individual who's graduated, is off at school, but there will be, I believe there'll be a ceremony for him. And when I have the specifics, if I haven't already sent it out, I'll send it out to the town board for anyone who wishes to be there for the ceremony.
Congratulations, Patrick and Ryan Patrick, and another impressive school, RIT. The other one was Clarkson. These guys are very, very talented and bright. Software engineering, huh? Japanese, incredible.
It is, it's amazing. It's really amazing. Congratulations again, another fine example of the wonderful young people we have in our town.
Yes, and what a beautiful Eagle project, and unique. Kind of surprised you, Ryan didn't decide to pursue something historical, given some of the work he did, but I think that's a very creative project, and so congratulations, Ryan.
Maybe if he stays in town after graduation, we can convince him to join the Historic Site Committee.
Right.
And thank you, Ryan, for your work on that project.
Any comments from the audience or online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Fellow board members and Supervisor Schultz, I have resolution 22-297, 2021 to authorize bills payable for October 15th, 2021 through today, October 27th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion?
The light bills this end of this month. I was very happy. It was delightful.
We didn't have all the, none of the books.
Book orders.
They saved those for me.
Now, there was
Problem
one.
with the books is instead of doing an aggregate invoice, they come in as a bunch of separate invoices. We won't go there.
Hundreds.
So, any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution 22-298, 2021 to authorize the supervisor to sign the agricultural lease for property on Martin Road with Chase Farm Partnership.
Seconded.
So we're planting trees to separate out the parkland from the residents who live essentially in the former farmhouse. We are going to be starting the parkland alienation process to take a little portion of that park and give them a backyard, because when they originally carved the parcel out for the house, they didn't put any backyard there. So that basically brings the tillable acres down from 30 to 29. So we're just same individual who had the current lease, we're just effectively updating the lease. Although what we really decided the easiest thing to do was issue a new lease that has the same coterminous date as the existing lease. So any questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 22-299, 2021 to authorize the supervisor to sign a letter in support of Aptitudes Shelter Rent Pilot Agreement application with Comida.
Second.
So I wanted to give some updates before we vote on this. In discussion with the Comida, I will say we get a lot more information from the new Comida board and new management. Apparently the reduced start that has been kind of standard in town for some years was never made clear that that's actually non-standard. And that the standard is just a flat 10%. So I actually intend to go back to these individuals and say, if we approve it, it's for a flat 10%. The way it had always been sold to me, and it kind of explains things now as to why they were amenable when I did the ramp up, is because the default starts at 10%. But years ago, that's again, that somehow a previous town board had approved the one for Marketplace, or excuse me, not Marketplace, for Wilmerite at Park Point, and everybody's been copying it. And again, I added the adjusted ramp up.
For Apex, the ramp up.
I added Apex a couple and the Hill. What we added post Apex, and that would be in this one, is that there is if they haven't started collecting rent by the end of the first year, they basically owe a portion of their ad valorem value. Because what happened at Apex, because of the pandemic, they ended up not opening up that first year, and therefore they paid zero taxes. Because of the way shelter rent, it's a percentage of the rent you collect. If you collect no rent, you pay no tax. So we did not feel that's fair to other property owners. So all future ones going forward have the clause. We had last put it in for, I don't remember which project it was. Oh, I know, it was the one that's at the senior housing at Marketplace Mall. So that same clause we're carrying forward, but like I said, originally it was going to be ramp up 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then be 10 flat from there. I'm going to go back to these folks and say, if you want our support, now this is assuming that you guys vote yes for this,
I support that wholeheartedly.
that we would hold it flat at 10%. And part of our reasoning, as we talked about for supporting this, is that they did, every time we came to these guys with a request from a community benefit, they did come forward, including the promise to Garrett to basically, they acquired the historic property, they shifted their structures and parking lots away from it. They are going to maintain it. In terms of whether we included it here in the pilot, it was suggested instead that we do, it was like a community benefits agreement type of thing. So we will negotiate that separately, but if we do this improvement, then I would basically, like I said, we'd get that put in place as well. So, so like I said, in addition to that, they also did the multimodal path. They shifted the roads to where the Monroe County DOT thought it was the safest place for them to exit. They're granting an easement to the property to the north, so we can further reduce an entrance onto East River Road if that property ever develops. So they've done a lot in that regards. And to their point, that doesn't come for free. It costs them money. And so the shelter rent would absolutely help them recover that additional cost. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear that it's getting up to 10% if it's approved, but I, for one, will not be voting yes for this. I don't think the residents actually want to subsidize every project that the town or these developers built. I'm sorry. So, yeah.
And just to be clear, this is just, we're not approving or denying the pilot. We're just approving or denying whether we're going to write a letter of support for the pilot. Whether the pilot goes through or not is up to Comida.
Right.
So one of the things I will note is that letter about the non-standard, that one goes away. I'm going to basically tell them that we are not interested in supporting a non-standard rate.
Great.
So if we, originally, there were two letters attached. One would go out if we denied this. One that goes out if we do approve the support. The denial letter originally said that, again, I thought it was talking about our 5% ramp. It turns out it was anything below 10%. So I'm glad I pushed back and asked. And like I said, unfortunately, I don't know why previous committee administrations or county development or whoever, but hats off to Anna Liz. She was actually even out of town all week for training and classes, and she each evening got back to me with my questions. So
She has great parents.
for those who don't know, her parents are here in Henrietta and actually involved in various boards. So
Dad's on planning board, isn't he?
Yep.
And I think her mom's on Parks and Recreation.
yeah. So any other questions? Any comments from the public or online? And hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
No.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 22-300, 2021 to authorize the supervisor to execute a proposal from Marathon Engineering to do a field topographical survey along Lehigh Station Road for Phase 2 of the Lehigh Station Road Sanitary Sewer Project.
Second. Any discussion?
Once again, real happy to hear that these people are gonna have the opportunity to get sewers if they want it.
Again, thanks to all the work the engineering department's doing in regards to this. We're saving cost by doing as much of the work that we can do in-house as opposed to farming it all out.
Yeah, the residents there are very, very happy. As I was talking to one, it was not affordable before this came about. And now it is, and they're very happy to get connected. So great job and looking out for our residents again and making it affordable to get connected publicly to the sewer system.
And as you know, we've talked about with what we're going to be doing with the
ARP.
The ARPA money, we'll be doing more of these, although the most of the remaining ones will actually be for water. There'll be a couple sewer ones that we have been able to convince as developers to do it through the incentive zoning program. So we'll be able to get, you know, in a number of locations where there should be sewer, should be water, we'll be able to get most of those in place. Any further discussion? Anything from the public or online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 22-301, 2021 to authorize the town to enter into updated commercial non-mass market commodity supply agreements with NOCO Natural Gas and Electric to reflect fixed pricing.
Second.
So this basically with where rates for natural gas are going, especially, they are rising quickly. We had gotten locked in last week during when we were together for a previous meeting. We had approved going after it. There was actually a mix-up, and originally they didn't lock us in and the rates went up. But I went and argued with them that we had put forth a town board resolution. We had basically locked in the rates. we would have to go back to a special meeting because basically the rates are only available for 24 hours. Said this clearly, it was essentially, it was contract terms passing in the night, for lack of a better way to put it. And then the individual wasn't there till the end of the business day. And by the time he got the stuff, the rates had gone up. So we basically, they took it up to the vice president and they honored the rates. So,
Great job.
pointed out that, again, clearly we had passed a resolution approving this. This wasn't a thing of us trying to get out of it. So, hats off to NOCO for recognizing that and what I consider doing the right thing. So we are locked in at the lower rates, which will help tremendously as, again, it's expected that natural gas is going to drive through the ceiling, especially because if you've looked at any of the maps for the expected winters for the Pacific Northwest, it's was it La Nina year that basically it's going to be really cold up there. So don't be surprised if natural gas, like I said, goes through the roof. But not for us. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution 22-302, 2021 to hire personnel and make attached changes.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution 22-303, 2021 to adopt the fiscal year 2022 preliminary budget.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Not that we haven't had a lot of it already. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution 22-304, 2021 to adopt local law number 14 of 2021 to establish a community choice aggregation energy program in the town of Henrietta.
Second.
Any discussion? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 22-305, 2021 to hire Jewel Assets as community choice aggregation administrator.
Second. So just, I'm gonna do a quick question. Anybody feel Pat put together a letter from the Sustainability Committee. If there's anybody who hasn't had a chance to read it or needs further convincing, I'm happy to have her come up here, but since we're pushing 9 o'clock, I'm also just as happy to just include the letter in the minutes and save her the speaking time.
I take it she was in, I didn't see the letter, so I take it she was in favor of the.
Wholehearted. Well, again, that's what it mentions in the resolution.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, I actually really appreciated the
Committee.
letter because I thought it was, it helped to break it down as to your decision-making process. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And great job presenting Shannon.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. That concludes our resolutions. Do I have any public discussion?
Sure. I'd just like to say thank you to our town attorney for also working on the sustainability, the program and the contract, and making sure all the i's and t's were dotted. Thanks a lot, Don.
Sure, thank you.
So like that.
Do we require, does the town require landscapers and plowing services to get any type of permit to operate in the town?
Depends on the zone they're in, but generally, yes.
Okay, so any, if they're residential, if they're plowing residential neighborhood.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you meant. I thought you meant a company operating a location of business, that those generally require special use permit. I don't think we have anything from a licensure standpoint for plowing. Does anybody, any of the staff online know that one way or the other, Kevin or Tim or Chuck, if you happen to be listening? Or Craig? I'm not aware of anything.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Steve, it's Kevin here. I'm not aware of anything for plowing at all for the town, just our plumbers and contractors have to have, insured with us. That's it. General contractors.
No, I was referring to, I
Right.
was referring to if you're doing driveways.
No, he knows. He's saying.
No license.
He's aware that has a requirement.
And the other thing I think we need to discuss sooner or later is is our sign ordinance that you and I have had some discussions about,
Right.
that I'd like to.
Yeah, it's a little jacked up.
you
I
know,
agree.
Well, one of the things also, they're talking about probably different sections of the town code that you're talking about, Kevin.
Okay.
But one of the problems we have with temporary signs, with actually all of our sign code, is you can only go after the property owner. Well, that works great if it's a business and their signs are out of whack, but when people put up temporary signs on other people's properties.
Right.
It's, so for temporary signs, we want to make it that you can either go after the property owner, the owner of the signs, or the business or entity advertised on the signs. So that way, it's not fair, especially since in many cases, the property owner, if it's not their house, they may not even be aware that sign is there. As we know that's happened on many occasions, especially, shall we say, during political signs with those temporary signs that they often get put on county land, on state land, on town park land. When we see those, we have them removed, but we don't know for the people, who have an empty lot. We don't know whether the owner of that lot has given them permission or not. But, we had an incident where one judge sign was blocking the view of traffic coming out of Edgewood onto Jefferson. As you know, that's already a really dangerous situation. And so as soon as that was spotted and brought to my attention, we reached out to a number of individuals and we were able to get it moved. So
We also,
and thank you to those individuals.
there's also signs on county land
Right. Yep.
that haven't been removed.
So the other thing we have to deal with is that the way the code is written today, essentially every business pretty much has to come in for a variance, and there's minor variances that almost always get approved. So it creates a whole lot of additional cost for the developer, work for our staff. It would greatly simplify things if we could basically go through the code and figure out which of the things make sense. And then also there's a couple sections of the code that are confusing and seemingly contradictory. And there's other places where, like I said, these small things are not allowed and require a variance, but then you can have the part that's always killed me. If I have 1,000 foot of street frontage, I can have one sign. If I split that up into 10 parcels, I can have 10 signs. It's not, if I split it up into, if the minimum parcel width is 50 feet, I could have 20 signs. That makes no sense. So those are the kinds of things that, like I said, I'd love to take a look at, but it's not a small undertaking. And I will say the next one on my agenda is the fines and violations, because we have an issue right now under the new rules. Because all of our fines also have the potential for jail time, which is crazy for a first-time offender who parks their car on the lawn. that they could somehow end up in jail. That's silly. But because of that, anybody who gets a notice has a right to a public defender because they have the potential for jail time. If we remove that potential for jail time, that goes away. And I can guarantee you that the public defender's office really wants us to do that. They don't want to deal with public defenders for somebody who let their grass grow more than 6 inches or, park their car on the lawn improperly or whatever. So I do want it there for repeat offenders, but I don't want it there for first-time offenders. So we'll be fixing that. Okay. Any committee or miscellaneous reports?
I just have a small one, library. Adrian has the early voting going on at the library, and it's actually going on there Sunday, even though the library is closed.
Way to
So-
go, Adrian.
So the hours are Thursday 11 to 8, Friday 9 to 5, Saturday 9 to 3, and Sunday 9 to 3 for early voting at the library in the community room. Look at the library, look online at the library for any other special events. I didn't see anything else to announce. I'm sorry? No, I didn't see anything else. So check for story time and all of those other things going on at the library.
As far as the library, do I get an email when I have to renew my library card? I think I just got one. Okay, I'll follow that up.
It looks like the school district is moving forward with plans for the access road through the Good Shepherd property. But in my opinion, probably not quick enough to alleviate some of the issues, pandemic-related issues that are happening around the senior high school.
So following that, based off of that discussion, I am following up with Superintendent Wright as well as Captain Fay from B Zone. We're going to have a meeting to try to discuss, as well as actually the head of our crossing guards, that we're setting up a meeting for next week, or might already have it set up. Maribeth is doing the scheduling, but to basically figure out what can be done to reduce the cut throughs, especially at Alita. That's where the worst is, but also the next intersection down, they cut over to Colony. Yeah, Masthead. So we're going to see what possibilities we have, or is there some way to be able to get the left out? We've had some suggestions from the community, which I've forwarded those to the group involved. So we'll see if we can get something done. It's a tough situation because, again, because of the pandemic, a lot more parents are dropping off. And so there's more congestion there than ever before. And the lines were creating problems with vehicles and buses not being able to get out. So I understand why they wanted to turn right. Unfortunately, at that location, the major streets are really big blocks. So you have to go a long way around. And in this day and age, people aren't that patient, so they try to take shortcuts.
I really appreciate you working together with the school district and the sheriff's office to address the issue. I mean, I've been up through there every day for the past 6 years, and this year has been, it really is pandemic related. It's uncontrollable.
Yeah, somebody who drops their kid off, their son off every day. I've seen them, seen the big difference. So that was every day up until this week when he got his driver's license. So.
Yay.
So I have a couple of things from the Parks and Recs department. The work continues on the play and fitness equipment at Breeze Park along the Play Pod Trail, and they're going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony on Saturday, November 13th, 12 to 2. Everybody's invited to walk the trail, see the new equipment, try it out. Those gathering start is at 12 with the ribbon cutting and late refreshments will be served.
I will note that if this rain continues, the one pod station that is only accessible by grass will not be done because we're not going to tear up everything. Just the ones that are off of the stone dust trails will be operational at that point.
There's going to be a blood drive at the rec center on Saturday, October 30th, 9 to 2. Appointments are encouraged. You can register online at redcrossblood.org. Applications for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Love Overcome scholarships are due by November 1st. Those applications can be found at henrietta.org/park and recreation. And the senior center is installing new security cameras.
New what?
Security cameras.
And actually, they're already installed in operation.
Yep.
I guess that leaves me, huh?
We have you?
I'd like to thank all the members of the planning board for all their hard work. Also the attorney there and Strella, and the zoning board also, all those members, and the attorney there, Eric Black. That's all I have.
Anything else?
I know there's a board opening on the historical site committee, and I know we've got some openings on the library board also. So check the website if you're interested in joining some of these boards. There's some wonderful people that are on them, and we would appreciate your help.
And one of the other things too, there is if you go to henrietta.org/subscribe, you can actually sign up to get a notice when any board opening appears. So if a board you're interested in an opening, there's no opening this year, sign up on that, because especially if somebody has to leave the board mid-year, it's makes it easier for you to know and apply. You don't have to pay attention all year long, because I know some of our meetings like this one go long.
We've gone longer.
Yeah, we've gone longer.
This isn't bad.
Looks like it's still 6 o'clock to me.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, it's still 6 o'clock.
Do we have batteries in our budget for the clock back there?
Yeah.
We know we don't need a ladder to get
That's
the
right.
clock down.
Any further discussion? Anything from the public or online? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing no objections, meeting